Welcome to the show, everyone. Welcome. Today, you are witnessing the first summit of the Four Horsemen. I am Gabriel Fast. I do claim to be the Wannabe Critic. I have with me Fonz, Ariano. I always forget how to say your name, Fonz. I'm sorry, but how you feeling? We got he's from Plastic Hearts Podcast. How's it going?
I'm feeling it. It's you can say my name however you want, Gabe, but I'm here. We're doing it. Four Horsemen. Let's go.
The Four Horsemen. It's the thing. Like, you can't stop us. And I also have Jacob Bush from Bush League Gaming. Jake, how's it going, man?
Thanks for not messing up my last name again, Gabe. I appreciate it. I'm glad to be here.
Yeah, last time I called, I was going to say something, but it would have been really, really stupid and wouldn't have landed at all.
I would have
Moving
appreciated
on.
it.
Yeah, I'm sorry.
That name.
It's not that hard. It's literally
I think you should just say it.
Yeah,
How'd you do
no,
it, Gabe? How'd you do it?
And then I have James Magnificent joining us because I don't know how to. I didn't want to mess up your last name either. But it's Magnuson?
It's Magnuson, but now that you say magnificent, I think I might have to go and see what it costs to get my name changed. Not that I don't like it.
You should.
But, that'd be pretty nice cachet there for online.
I mean, I think, especially, I literally just gave you a brand. You're welcome. Like, you can use that until the end of time.
Appreciate it,
No,
my
I'm just
friend.
kidding.
Appreciate it.
Yeah, and we have James is from Circles and Squares. So I want to tell the story really fast. So I listen to all y'all's shows in various capacity, right? I think that's something maybe we can talk about tonight too, is like the world of content creation has gotten so big, like, and you make acquaintances online and you might hear a couple episodes of someone's show and it's like, man, I really vibe with this. But then that happens like 30 times and it's like, man, I literally cannot consume all of this. So we might have to get into that in a little bit. But what started as a joke, it has now led to this. I tweeted out something that said, like, it would be wild if we all got together and did a podcast because, from four completely different walks of life, trying to get together to do this thing, it seemed like it might have been difficult. But then James came in clutch and was like, hey, like, let's make this happen for real. So here we are about a month and a half later after said tweet, and we're doing it. We're here. We're talking about content creation. This is a little bit different content than what we usually do on the Wannabe Critic, but I feel like every outlet gets a chance to kind of have this conversation because you can tell people about it and you can try and tweet at people and and find that connection, that middle ground, whatever. But there's just nothing like having a face-to-face, in a sense, conversation. And really getting down to the nitty gritty and talking about it with people who get it. So I feel like all of us are kind of creating content in a similar vein. And honestly, some of my favorite podcasts to listen to because they're practical and relatable. So we're going to get to know everyone tonight. It's going to be awesome. Fonz is going to take the lead with the discussion with a lot of the questions a little bit later. But I kind of wanted to go around the room and, have everyone introduce themselves and then kind of just give a brief story of how you got started doing what you're doing. So, Fonz, let's you're directly to my left on my screen. So let's start with you. How did you get started?
You got it. Yeah, it's something I've thought about for a long time, but never actually got serious about doing it. I remember riding my bike around town, just thinking it'd be so dope. You could do this, that, and the other thing. My buddy Gavin, who I actually do the show with, he had moved, and so I thought if there's a way to link up with him, he's doing this indie game dev school at the time, which we graduated from. I thought it'd be cool because we're just actual nerds to link up to actually talk about it. And the whole time listening to stuff as well, like IGN, all the big podcasts, I was just fully engrossed in that. And then years later, I finally actually got the bug, let's do it. And then the mountain of work then piled on me of, you actually have to, compile this stuff together, figure out the equipment, the software, and then on top of all that, it's you still have to speak well, which I don't. You have to actually read up on the news. It's a whole list of work, but I've thought about it for so long. I'm finally doing it, but now we're starting Plastic Hearts Podcast. We're on 3 years now, but it's been awesome.
Well, there you have it. I mean, that's a Cinderella story right there, gentlemen. Success is imminent for Fonz and Plastic Hearts. Yeah, you just wait. Fonz. Your time is coming. All right.
I'm the mouse in the Cinderella story, right?
Don't forget all of us small people whenever you've made it. Okay. No, I'm just kidding.
I'm forgetting you instantly. I'm rolling out. I'm getting my shades on.
What? Yeah, exactly. Peace. Jacob Bush, why don't you kind of give us a brief little introduction to what's going on with whatever you do over there.
So what I do over here is Bush League Gaming. Someone coined this term, and I'm a fan of it, but it's a pandemic production. It started because of the pandemic. When you're home stuck, not doing too much, and not hanging out with your bros, we decided to start a podcast. It's something that we've like vaguely kind of talked about in the past, where we always met up for coffee every Wednesday morning, and we would catch up and talk everything, all walks of life. But a lot of times it would transition into video games. So we already were having like deep talks about games. And, during the pandemic, we started doing Zoom, and it kind of evolved into what Bush League Gaming is today. We've been doing it for about a little over a year and a half now. And absolutely love it. And, we transitioned to video about 7-8 months ago, and that's been a fun transition too. So that's Bush League Gaming.
There you have it. Sorry, I cut out for just a second. So
I was like, did I cut out? Or did
I
you
say
cut
I'm
out?
sure.
I was gonna say, should
I
I
was
just
like
jump
staring
in?
in the camera.
We're
Oh
waiting
my
on
god,
you,
I'm
James. We're
sorry.
waiting on
Yeah,
you.
it was like a 5-second delay. One thing I've always like appreciated about Bush League Gaming is, y'all are like lifelong friends and family in some aspects, and man, there's just
cousin
nothing.
brothers, you can say it.
Yeah, exactly. Like there's just nothing that beats that dynamic. Like no matter how good of friends you are with someone, like that's its own like can of worms. But like there's just nothing that beats that family member that's also like one of your really close friends, because you just listen to you and Ryan go back and forth, man. Like it's super duper entertaining because one of you usually says something that's completely wrong.
Yeah,
Ryan, sorry.
Usually Ryan. Yeah, it's worth stating. Yeah, so Ryan and I are cousin-in-laws, so our wives are cousins, but we always call each other brothers too, because we feel that bond. So it's cousin brothers, and that's a really weird term. But then also Nick. I've known Nick since high school. Adam's on the podcast. Sometimes I know him since high school. Some of our other reoccurring people I've known since college. So like, it's just like been my core group of friends since day one. And that's kind of what we've kept Bush League Gaming to. And then we have people on like Gabe pretty frequently too. So as we meet people, we like to have others on, but at the end of the day, it's just like that core family friend group that makes up Bush League Gaming.
You even let me write some stuff on Bush League, which I've been thinking about doing again recently. So stay tuned, ladies.
Whenever you're ready, Gabe.
Yeah.
Whenever you're ready.
I love to write. So
I do.
Anyways, all right, enough of that. James Magnuson.
It's magnificent, man.
My friend.
Magnificent.
That's right. Well, you didn't change your freaking name, so I wasn't sure. So James, this whole thing came together because of your, ability to be outgoing. So I want to thank you very much for that. What's kind of your story?
Well, no, thank you, my friend. You're the one that put the initial tweet out. I just kind of massaged it a little bit, in the comments in the Twitter thread there.
Yeah,
that's all I did.
Exactly. That's
Dude,
I mean, you finessed it.
Yeah, it was one of those things. You have. I'm sure we've all had it. Those plans where it's like, oh yeah, we should totally get together. Like let's totally hang out, and it just never happens, right? So I was like, screw it. Like, what if it just did happen this one time? And that's the only reason I did. So,
totally.
No, it's all your guys' work for showing up too. But yeah, I guess ours is kind of similar to Bush League in a way, Circles and Squares. My co-host, for people, I guess, that have not heard of us, is actually my sister. So we've been playing games together for like our entire lives. And basically, it started out just as a way for us to get together and talk about our favorite hobby, right? So it's similar stuff. We like to come together and just talk about what we're playing, talk about the news. It's kind of just whatever we feel like. But yeah, it's a nice way to connect, right? And we similar story to the other guys as well. Just you have an idea, you ruminate on it for a bit, and then eventually you look into what does a mic cost? Okay, well, the first one you get's not so great. What does it look like to get a better one? And first you're editing on some you're teaching yourself via YouTube tutorials. I still am. And you move your way up slowly and surely, and then it's just fun to do it, right? That's why we're still doing it. And it's a great hobby. I would never take it back now that I've started. I'm sure you guys wouldn't either.
It's a part of my life now. I mean, I've been performing music you see the drums and the guitar. Like, I've been composing and performing music for a decade, and it's a great feeling. But once I got the podcasting bug, I realized, like, oh my God, like, this is my calling, and I can incorporate elements of what I did before into it, which I have. So it's literally this hobby that unifies everything else that I love. So yeah, I mean, I couldn't give it back for anything. I'm trying to, I think we're all in some sense, like you want to find success, right? And like, what is success defined by? Is it a dollar amount? Is it a level of fame? You know, a level of just respect, you know? It's interesting how this hobby / career path for whatever, it's interesting how it takes us in certain directions and helps us meet certain people, you know, and that's why I appreciate if you hear that ticking. My time is almost up. No, I'm just kidding. It's on my side if you hear it.
Your life alert or something?
There's a bomb.
It's actually a bomb. Yeah, it's actually a bomb. So we gotta wrap this thing up. Yeah, take cover. Yeah. So I really appreciate you guys, you know, making the time to kind of reconvene. It's awesome hearing your stories of kind of how this all got started. For me, I will say I started podcasting like in 2014 with one of my co-hosts, Ethan Maestri. We do a segment called Punch Counter Punch on the Wannabe Critic podcast. And I was raised an only child and had like a lot of, whether I realized or not, a lot of artistic like outlets that I wanted to pursue. So like I'd watch a movie and we'd like heavily criticize it. So my family would always be like, you know, who's this guy think he is? Well, now I can finally say I'm the wannabe critic, and you'll listen. You'll listen to every dang word I have to say, you know. But like it's going on, you know, 8 years now at this point that I've been doing this. And then in 2017, I decided I wanted to start my own, which started out as Geekly Biweekly with me and my best friend Jace. And it just kind of grew from there. And it was like kind of like what you were talking about, James, of kind of leveling up your setup, you know, and like taking it to the next level and stuff like that. It kind of gave me nostalgia a little bit, James, because, you know, not too long ago, you guys announced that you're going to be doing video. And I remembered whenever I started doing video, it was like such a big deal for me,
right?
You know, because, you know, you're just taking it. Audio is one thing, but you're like, you know, and same thing with, you know, I never really had a doubt in my mind. Because how old are you, James? You're probably my age. You're like 26,
29,
right?
Man, I'm 20. I'm 30 later this month.
You're 29. You're going to be 30.
Don't tell me.
I'm the youngest one here.
Gross.
What the heck? Gosh.
Baby Gabe.
I know, dude. And I'm like, have you seen this face? Like, I'm
dude, look at me,
forever
man.
16.
Look at me.
Yeah, you too. That's why I thought you were my age.
I know,
I'm
man.
like,
It's because I don't
holy
have
crap,
the beard, right?
but-
The beard and whatever I do have gets washed
Yeah.
out by the lights, and it's just like you can't pick it up. No.
Yeah, no, exactly. Like I have like a full-on week of shaving that I just shaved off today, except for my mustache, and you can't even see it on camera.
Solidarity,
So
my friend.
there's that.
Solidarity.
Nope.
Yeah, it is what it is. But for whatever reason, like I don't know. Whenever I listen to Circles and Squares, I think that's what I like about all of your guys' shows is like I just feel so connected to it because I just feel like it's practical to my personal journey that I've gone through as well as what I'm going through now. It's like I can just hear elements of stuff we do here in all of those, so therefore I'm more drawn to those because they're practical, they're real, like not fake, very unapologetic in a lot of aspects, and you know, as close to the facts as you can be, and I just love that. So we're going to kind of pivot here in a second. Thank you again for being here for sure. And thank you to everyone who's listening. You know, whether you're here from Fonz's audience, Jacob's audience, James's audience, or my audience, we're absolutely ecstatic to have you here. And I can already tell this is going to be the first of this. This won't be the last time we do this. We're going to have to reconvene, you know, a couple times a year and make the Four Horsemen.
Just say you
know.
can't have a name like that and not make use of it. You know what I
And
mean?
not
Like,
do
that's a
something,
big
right?
waste
That's kind of
potential.
yeah.
True.
Someone check if that's taken, by the way.
Yeah,
It is a
million-
Metallica song, so I mean,
It's in the Bible too.
That's
I
where it
mean,
came
you know,
from,
that's-
for sure.
it is in my life.
Yeah,
man. It is in my
exactly.
life.
Yeah,
It
yeah,
sounded familiar.
exactly.
I wasn't sure where I got that from.
Yeah, man, that was great. So we're gonna pivot to Fawn's kind of taking the lead with the conversation, but I wanted to ask first of all, you know, what is success? What is success to you as a creator, and what do you think the stereotypical version of success is? You know, whenever it comes to content creation. And I think that'll kind of set like a nice base for our discussion. And I'll go first. To me, success is making stuff that I'm happy with, proud of, and excited to share. And having at least one person listen to it. So like to get any feedback from one person at all, like for someone to even just listen to it or watch it or whatever, and then like today it was really weird. Like I had made a joke that someone needed to clip something, and like, oh, someone needs to add Mr. Boombastic as the dumb spin in Boba Fett, and someone freaking did it. I don't even know who he is, and I was like, this is awesome. Like we have someone, there is someone out there, you know what I mean? And so to me, that's like that sense of community and camaraderie and people who are like in on the joke, right? I think that's why we're drawn or have been drawn in various aspects to various communities that we've been a part of, you know, is you like to feel in on the joke or in on the whatever, because it connects you to that person. So to me, I think that's what my version of success is having people who are there kind of along the journey with me and helping in a sense to keep it going. And then I think also a stereotypical version of success is becoming one of the big guys, right? Like becoming one of the big guys, because then inherently you have like notoriety attached to you no matter what. So that's kind of my opinion as to what that is. And I'm definitely curious to hear what your guys' are. So Fonz, I'm going to throw it to you first.
Yeah, no, you mentioned that levels of success earlier when you're talking, and I already got the gears working in my brain. And I think I've leaned towards what you're saying, where there's levels to it, because right now that level of success for me is, you know, getting people to listen and having that interaction, just like you're saying. That's super important. That's really all I'm trying to get. And even more so, just like linking up like we're doing now with other creators and just chatting with people that also care about everything nerd, you know, everything video games, movies, that kind of stuff, just because it's fun. So even if no one's listening, it's still fun to talk to people about this kind of stuff. But then also going from there, it'd be dope to pay my bills doing this. That'd be cool to like not have a regular job. There's also
or
that.
A bill.
But that's really
one bill
or a bill, something, and not just be in debt
Something.
because this thing paying Adobe Premiere, you know, subscriptions or whatever. But yeah, that's my cap, where it's like if I could pay my bills doing this, then that's, oh man, that's a limit. Then anything past that is just cool, you know, awesome stuff. But I don't really hold my breath on it, and I just try and just make it better, reach out to people, keep cranking it out, I guess. But that's always that carrot at the end of the stick, I guess. But I'm just having fun doing it, and so maybe that'd be cool to reach that one point. But as long as I can be happy with the actual episodes I'm coming out with, then that's my level right now.
That was beautiful. I almost wept just then, just so you know.
I saw a tear, single tear.
This is why we're friends. I mean, you know, like that. What you just said. I'm gonna put on makeup like after you leave, and I'll send you, like, I'll take a picture and you can just see it, and there, you know, like, fine, I put on the makeup, Fonz. All right,
that's not good enough. You gotta do an episode with the makeup.
The next time.
You know what? I'll make you a deal. Next time they put out a record, there'll be some form of makeup.
That's an easy way out, because I don't know when they're going to put out another record.
I know, right? And I just said some form of makeup. So anyways, if you don't get it, get wrecked.
Yeah.
Anyways, exactly. Jacob Bush, throwing it to you.
Yeah, I mean, echoing a lot of what both of you said. When I always talk to the guys, it's always, is this fun? That's really what the core question we have. If we're deciding to do something, we ask that question. And if we're deciding to get rid of something, we also ask that question. Is this not fun anymore? And we'll stop doing that. That is like the core philosophy of Bush League, is like, this is to be fun. This is to be a stress relief in some ways. And I would be lying if I didn't say that the metrics didn't affect me. You know, like it's hard to, like, if someone truly said they separated themselves from, like, hey, that video did really well, it did nothing for me. I didn't feel any emotion from that doing really well. That's really hard to be in that space. So those things still, like, make me click in a way of, like, oh man, that video did great. That made me feel good. I would like to separate myself from that metric. I really would. But at the end of the day, you know, the core of it is it fun? I want to grow, because through growth, we get to do really challenging and scary things for us. Like one of my favorite things is, like, interviewing people that are scary, and, like, that's just pushing us out of our comfort zone. And usually that's done through a little bit of growth. Like, you know, the bigger people, it's hard to get people on your podcast if, like, you're not pulling any views, and I've tried, right? But that's something that we try to get back to and keep it in perspective of, the goal of growth is to expand and do exciting things and do challenging things to continue to help us grow personally. And at the end of the day, that's fun, right? So coming back to the fun thing, but I'd be lying if I didn't say like a video doing well wasn't a success to us. Like that's always a success to us still. It's not just not the number one success.
Yeah, I think that what you just said is like super practical, or it should be practical. Like, you know, for me, whenever I first started the YouTube channel of just doing music, you know, you'd put out a video and it'd be like 10, 12 views like every time. But I learned through that process, right? So I think there comes a time after you've put out so much content, you get to a point where you know, like, man, this is the average, right? It's gonna get at least this for sure. And then whenever it pops off, it's like, oh, okay, cool, you know. But I feel like, and this is kind of getting into Fonz's discussion a little bit, but I think it gets to a point, or at least it has for me, and maybe the other guys can kind of speak to this, where you kind of fallen in love with the work aspect of it, or certain certain aspects of the workflow. And I think once you get to that point, it's like the fact that it's even out, like you're satisfied with that. It's like, oh my God, like I had 10 shows to edit this week and I got 3 of them out like on time. This is amazing, you know? And then at that point, it's like anything on top of that is cherry, you know, it's like just cherry on top in a way. Because it's like, then if it really does well, it's like, well, frick, maybe I am doing good. Like maybe I am like putting in the work and being recognized like the way I should. So I appreciate you being candid about a view count, because if someone looks at a video and sees that one comma, anything at all, and you're a small creator or, you know, a newer creator, you're lying if you're saying it doesn't affect you in some aspect. But I do agree, it shouldn't be like the top of the mountain, you know, whatever type of thing.
I genuinely wish it didn't though too. Like I'm not on social media to separate myself from kind of those dopamine hits. Like that's kind of how I classify it. And unfortunately, like this content creation does fuel that in some ways. But regardless, like we have to come back to like, okay, at the top of the list, what's priority?
Right.
But again, if you're being honest, that's us being honest, right?
Yeah, for sure. I think the fact that, you know, I feel like all these shows are very honest, you know, and like, yeah, to me, you know, Jacob and I have talked about this too before, like heavily editing shows versus not. And I think we're kind of fooling ourselves sometimes into thinking that our audience really cares that much. Because one thing I've learned is you can put out absolute crap to you, but if your audience likes it, that's all that really matters, you know? So I think at some point there are choices that are made. It's like, no, I have to go this extra mile, which is good. It's a good practice to be in, but it's not really for the audience. It's for your peace of mind and like for you, really. You know, because I've gotten compliments on stuff we did years ago, and I go back and listen to it, and I'm like, oh my God, like this is horrible. But people like it. You know, that might be their first introduction to you. So I think it's kind of like what you're alluding to. It's all about that matter perspective, and kudos to you for like stepping away from aspects that make that priority, right? Like make those kind of more vanity-esque things at the forefront of your mind. Because I think, yeah, it's super easy. We've all been there. We've all been there. If you're listening to this, you're a content creator. We've all been there. We've all felt it. And kudos to you for kind of separating yourself. So did you kind of answer your, you know, what is the stereotypical like version of success? Do you think that kind of falls into that of having, I mean, like
stereotype is like metrics, I would say, right? It's okay. View counts, it's subscribers, it's all of those things,
likes, comments, right?
Likes, what, you know, the social media buzz things, right? That's kind of traditional success, I think.
Okay. Mr. Magnificent himself, James Magnuson.
I mean, yeah, it's hard to think of stuff that hasn't really been said, because I think we all have a similar philosophy on kind of what we're trying to do. But it's interesting talking about sort of getting into the metrics and like the numbers and separating yourself from that. And I think something that I've noticed is like one of the pieces of content that we've put out that has a lot of views, for example, I think is actually one that I feel, for example, I could have done a lot better on. And then I have reverse experiences where I feel like, man, that was a banger episode. Like that was so good. And it gets like nothing, right? And you like, yep. The validation can work in some weird ways where it's like, you feel like you're getting your best stuff not being appreciated. And then people are, you know, checking out other things at the same time. It's
Yeah, I agree with that. It's like, but it's always, I think we get into that trap of like, oh, this one's going to be better. Like this one's going to be better. And it gets to a point where that just has to become second nature, in my opinion, because then you have a level of consistency of people know whenever I tune into a Bush League gaming episode, a Plastic Hearts podcast episode, or Circles and Squares, I know exactly what I am getting myself into, and it stays consistent every single time, you know? And if something's different, it's usually acknowledged by the host, you know? Like, for instance, a couple months ago, James, you had tweeted something out. You'd gotten a new microphone. You're kind of working on your audio or whatever. And I remember listening to that episode and being like, man, his mic was really hot in that episode.
Yes, it was.
Like,
Yes, it was.
Peaking a little bit. And, you know, but you acknowledged it. You were aware of it. And that shows that you had actually gone through your work. You had like, realized something is different. And whether there's 10 people watching or 100 people watching, you felt it was necessary to acknowledge it for your own sanity. You know, it's like people noticed that. I noticed it, and I was like, he takes his stuff seriously.
That's just it, man. And I feel like one of my biggest goals, like if something that I guess we haven't talked about yet, is like I'm just a really intrinsically motivated person, and it comes in all aspects of my life, whether it's school or work or personal stuff, and it falls totally into this as well. Like we do our episodes every Monday, and they come out every Monday, and we do not miss one. And just things like that. And like you're saying, like there was a problem with my mic and feeling like I needed to mention that. And I just feel like it's not even so much because of any one thing, more so than just that I holding myself to that kind of standard. And it's another avenue to where I get to do that. And that's an aspect that I really like about it. And the other one that's a big goal for me is just something that's like, it's a time capsule, you know, it's me talking about my favorite stuff on the planet. And it's going to be cool to have that as something like, I wish I had that from, ancestors of mine for whatever topic it is. And so for me, it's gaming, and that's what we're making, right? I think it's going to be cool to look back on that and just kind of this era of my life. So that's kind of what I view as success for that. Stereotypically, I mean, yeah, it's getting big enough to get on whatever show as a guest, to have guests on your show, to, make enough money to, support your hobby or do more with, it's all those kind of things that everyone thinks of. But I think going in expecting that, or, anticipating you're going to get these Twitch payouts or whatever you think off the bat, like you're going to set yourself up for having a disappointing time. And I think a lot of people who get really freshly into content and they have that expectation, I feel like they'll quit quickly because they'll be like, I'm not getting there in 6 months and this sucks. And, so I think it's all about your perspective and keeping it about yourself.
They're not at this point, right? They've already backed out.
Yeah, right.
Because I think we've all probably experienced that discouragement or that realization that like, whoa, this is hard.
Yeah,
this is
a lot of work. It's hours and hours, like beyond what you actually see people on camera with too. Like there's hours of editing, pre-show, taking notes of whatever you're talking about. There's a lot.
Just doing, and I don't know why I do it, but exactly, I'm like you, James. I'm like, there's a perfectionism part of me that's broken, and I'm also stubborn at the same time, and they don't go well together, because then I'm just like, I'm doing this regardless if it means anything to anybody. But like time codes take so long sometimes, and I still do it. And there's like, I've never heard anybody say like, hey, I really appreciate that you do time codes. I still do it though. I just like doing it. So man, those are some really good points.
Yeah, no, I think this is the reason. Like sometimes you just like kind of get to it with a group of people, and you vibe because everyone gets it. And I don't know, like I feel like we're at like an actors on actors right now in a way, because I feel like we're all kind of viewing content creation not only the same way, and that's why I asked the question, is because I'm genuinely curious, and it helps our conversation moving forward, because there are aspects of stuff. Okay, Fonz, to my knowledge, you do all the editing, correct?
Yeah.
For all your stuff. Jacob, you do all the editing, correct?
Everything.
James, you do all the editing, correct?
Sure do. Yeah, sure do.
Same. I do all the editing. We have various degrees of what we think matters. If I had a consistent like 30 people watching my show every week, sure, I'll throw in timestamps, but I know I'm not going to get that. And I know I can see by the metrics how long someone is watching my content or listening to it. So it's not like I don't care. It's just one of those things that's like, you're at the end of the episode or whatever. And honestly, I think, for me personally, we have 4 podcasts that we do regularly. So there's an element to it of these listeners are probably double dipping in a lot of aspects, and they know what to expect for the most part. And, that kind of slow, subtle growth, that just kind of happens after a while. But I think once it actually starts mattering more to me, I think those extra mile things are those things that should be the standard in general. Those are at the forefront of your mind. So, I'm taking notes from you guys because you both were like, oh yeah, like timestamps, like gotta have them. But I'm like, do you like,
no,
maybe.
To be clear, you do not have to have them.
Yeah.
You do not.
I'm
save yourself,
and I
man.
keep
Save
doing
yourself.
it.
Yeah.
Save yourself.
Save yourself.
I was listening to
Okay.
one podcast one time that just had them, and where they were going over E3 or something, and there was like this list of like so many timestamps, and I found it so useful myself, and ever since that moment, I was like, I have to include this for the one person that eventually sees this episode.
Yeah.
Takes
Literally.
because that was me, right?
It evolved from like we have spoiler sections sometimes, so I would always have a timestamp for spoiler sections, and then it turned into like, oh, there's a spoiler section, but also we talk about story here and gameplay mechanics, and then there's a conclusion and intro. I'll just do them all, and it's just a lot of work. But yeah, it's some people appreciate it. I don't think most of my audience does, but I'm still doing it. It's just
I'm here for it, man. I'm here. Don't stop.
Again.
okay. All right, I'll keep doing it. You're keeping me going.
Don't stop,
You're
yeah.
keeping me going.
Kind of going back to that thing, like, it's in some aspects like it is practical to the project, but in a way it's like whether people are seeing it or not, you're enjoying doing it. And like enjoying, using that term broadly, you get satisfaction from completing X, Y, or Z task. It's like it's really for you in a big way, but it should be the standard in general, but it's interesting. It's an interesting conversation we're having. So we're a little over a half an hour in, gentlemen, and I thought that was really great first question. So Fonz, you got a lot of material here, my guy, of stuff you want to talk about. So I'm going to let you navigate those waters, and I'm going to freaking guest now. So how about that? Huh? Yeah.
And it's up to you guys how into the weeds you want to get with some of these topics, but they can be relatively boring. But I was curious because I'm kind of isolated, having for a while, where we mentioned around the table we're all editing, and that's one of the first topics is I've been editing the whole thing myself and getting into the learning curve of learning it from the ground up and trying to master it and become efficient. But as far as just kind of the tackling that topic, we already answered that we actually individually edit our stuff, but what do you guys use? What have you found is the best software that works for you? And we'll go from there. But as far as like, what do you use to edit your actual podcast? And I'll flip it over to Jacob, and we'll continue in that big circle of life.
Cool. So it's transitioned over time. When we were doing audio only, I mean, we're talking budget setup. So we were using what was on my laptop, GarageBand. That's what I used to record and to edit. And getting in the weeds of it, because I like to get in the weeds of it, there was a time when I was so meticulous with editing that when we were doing Zoom, when we're talking with Zoom, there's a slight delay, right? There's always a slight delay. I would go through and edit that slight delay out every single time throughout the entire podcast. And I would edit a 1 hour podcast for about 4 hours. And that's how Bush League Gaming started. I was that meticulous with it. And if I go back and listen to those, I'm like, that's pretty good. I'm still peaking. I don't know what to do about peaking, but at least it sounds like I edited it down into a very concise, clean way. Transitioning to video was me consciously saying like, hey, this is the raw version now, and we're going to do raw versions. And I started out with, again, budget, iMovie. It was on my laptop. In 2022, we transitioned to Final Cut Pro and Logic Pro. So those are the two main, again, this is like the Apple side of things. And then when I'm recording on my PC, I'll use OBS for gameplay footage, or if I'm recording a podcast just for my PC. And then again, editing, it's all in Final Cut Pro now because we're doing video.
Gotcha. What about you, James?
Yeah, so we've been.
So.
What's up? We're all good. Okay.
Oh,
yeah. I was
continue.
gonna say we've been through a bit of a journey too. We started off, so I don't have a Mac, but we used Audacity at the start. I'm sure everyone loves Audacity, and so we used that for the longest time with audio. But and then basically, yeah, the video transition was a big changing point for us too, and especially the pandemic also, because the early episodes of our show were actually filmed with us at the same location as well. And then when the pandemic hit, we had to kind of, okay, what does a remote setup sort of look like? And then that's when OBS kind of came into the picture. And I liked OBS a lot because I actually usually record Kate's audio because only the two of us. I just record it from my desktop, so I actually just have both files right on there. kind of do it that way. So I think what you said, Jacob, about the raw version being videos a lot, it's like true of our show as well. I used to go through on, especially the early days, like the first 10 episodes or something, like be going through the Audacity files, zooming in, like cut these little things, like, oh, that breath was really loud, better cut that out. And it's just like, man, you'd be killing yourself doing that all the time. And of course with OBS too, you
No
get into,
one
like,
cares.
yeah, no one cares. And then you learn, like, as you get into it too, you also learn like what's a noise gate and stuff like that, and that begins to change the game a lot too. And I'm by no means I like pro or anything. I'm like completely self-taught on all of the stuff. And so my new I guess goal right now, what I'm working on is recently started using DaVinci Resolve to edit the videos instead, because I got a new laptop which can actually run that now. So that's been a lifesaver, because and before I had this old laptop and it was just a mess, and so it made all the difference in the world. And so I think it's going to be DaVinci for a while, and then who knows what'll be the next thing. But I think it's like once you master whatever you're kind of learning to do editing wise, right, you kind of move to that next, what's the next skill I want, what do I want to add to my show. So that's where I'm at for ours.
Real quick,
Yeah.
you mentioned taking out breaths and stuff.
Yeah.
Are you one of those people that hears that and you can't, like...
I've not really paid attention to it. I think it's just one of those things because you're editing your own content, right? Like it's very personal, and you want it's the same thing with the meticulous, like the timestamps of like, I want this to be the best it can, so I want this to be silent when it's not. But it's just one of those things.
You have to let it go eventually, because
Yeah.
there was a time when even I'll listen to other podcasts and I'll be like, and these are like huge podcasts, and I'm like, man, that's a really hard S that they just have.
Oh
Like
my
they
God.
need a better filter.
There's a few
and,
podcasts. Sorry to cut you off.
No, go ahead.
I was gonna say there's a few podcasts I listen to, like even like certain NFL podcasts, and they're like, I'm pretty sure that some of our shows are actually like, our shows are better audio quality than theirs sometimes, and it's just it's like a fact, like not saying we're professionals or anything, but it's true sometimes.
I mean, you hone your craft and you eventually just hear those things, right? If you're in it for long enough, you just start like picking up on that. So I was just curious if I have that problem where I really do just hear, if I hear someone like breathing a lot, I'm like, ouch. I don't like
Yeah, there's a point to which it's too much, right?
Yeah.
I think
you, Gabe.
I'll just kind of piggyback off that just for a second. So I kind of believe like in the human element of stuff. I like consuming content that feels like it was made by human beings, and there'll be times where I'll literally hear something and be like, man, that sounds weird, but I want to leave it in, One of the first, because I edit podcasts for clients and stuff, and they're always like, can you cut out my ums? And I'm like, no, I will not do that. And I'm like, you can pay, like literally, if you want me to do that, I will. You can pay me to do that. But your listeners are going to see through it, like, immediately. Because your listeners are going to be people most likely, for that type of podcast. And I'm like, and they know you say a lot. So they're going to see through the inauthenticity, like, immediately. So whenever me and my wife were doing, like, A Guy and His Wife, we had, like, an episode where there was, like, a 60-minute long, or not 60-minute, a 60-second long, like dead silence, like dead air. And I left it in because then whenever it comes back, it's like, wow, that made me massively uncomfortable just then. But like, thank God we're back to normal, And I don't know, like I really enjoy the human element of things where you kind of made a mistake and it's like, oh, you just feel connected to the people creating it, in a way.
Gabe,
but I also see the flip side too. Go ahead.
That's the Foo Fighters fan in you. Foo Fighters records the raw. They don't sit there and get in the weeds of like the best version or like repeating something. Like they want the raw version. So that, and I know you're a huge Foo Fighters fan. Like that is the.
I am. Well, I mean, 16, 17, 18, 19. Like I watched umptillion, interviews with Dave Grohl, and that was something that was heavily imprinted on me very early on. Before I even started doing podcasts, was having human element and like a raw nature to it, and it totally rings true and like really has been kind of crucial to me in creative anything moving forward. It's like, man, this sounds like crap. I'm like, I know, right? Like, it should. Like, I'm not a professional doing whatever. Like, you just want it to be palatable, of course. Like, there's a difference in something being non-palatable or whatever, but, I always like finding people that I can kind of look up to, and it's like, wow, they really do this, and this. Like, that's amazing. Like, I like kind of connecting people with that do go the extra mile, because in a big way, it's not mattered to me and probably never will in some aspects. But I always have a deep respect for people who do make that extra effort to make it sound how they see it or how they want it, and then you can kind of get in their head about whatever. But anyways, small sidebar. So I use Zoom audio for pretty much all of our podcasts that we do. Right now, not, that's not like all I've ever used. I usually have everyone record their audio separately and then upload it. But as of late, I've been kind of testing out just to see how it sounds. Because it's way less work to do it that way, just ripping those Zoom audio files, those separate files and stuff. And they've been sounding pretty good. Of course, if everyone sends you 3 or 4 different microphone files, you have to EQ them all to try and make them sound like as close as you can and blah, blah, blah. So, Zoom kind of does that for you. And on a good night, it's like, yeah, this sounds pretty good. Like, yeah, let's use it, whatever, So that's kind of what I use, but that's also my other method is just using whatever audio other people have. I edit inside of Adobe Premiere pretty much exclusively for audio and video. I don't use Logic hardly at all unless it's for music. So pretty much any audio you ever hear has been encoded through Premiere. Like that's pretty much all I use, and that's what I use for clients too, because it literally has Adobe Audition built into it. Like Premiere has Audition built into it, or many elements of it. So it's like, oh, well, I'll just use this. It's way quicker. Kind of similar though. Whenever I decided I wanted to start a YouTube channel, there's kind of like this void. It's like iMovie. Like that's free. That's what I learned. Cut my teeth on it, and then I learned very, very quickly. I had taken AV in high school, and had kind of learned about all of that. And we had a pretty nice studio, like recording studio there in the high school that I was able to utilize and kind of learn a lot of fundamental stuff, recorded music there, and really cut my teeth there. And then, of course, Ethan Maestri, he kind of showed me the ropes of Audacity. And whenever I started my podcast, Geekly Biweekly, he kind of gave me some tips. But kind of like what James was saying earlier, like lots of video tutorials and just kind of figuring out, like, what trying to shape the idea of what your podcast is going to sound like, right? Because there's an element of sound design where it's like your podcast... In my opinion, I don't really believe in following the, like to a T, whatever, because if you do that, then you're going to sound like a million other podcasts out there. Like, I want mine to sound different, so I do things a little bit differently each show. Sometimes I'll turn certain people up, where they've usually been quiet. Sometimes I'll make an episode a little bit louder, and it's just kind of like a really like fluid experience each time because, like I said, we produce a lot of content, so it kind of has to feel fresh in a way to me each time. I don't want to do things exactly the same every time, but it's pretty close. It's pretty close as to what we do each time. But then like moved further into Final Cut, which I quickly realized I hated, and been using Adobe Premiere ever since. So there you have it. That's what I use, and I love it. I love editing. I see your question here. Who likes editing? It took a couple of years, but I spend so much time doing it, and I've gotten to where we film a ton of different content, or I do, a lot of different stuff. So, I enjoy all aspects of it. I really, really do. I am just as in love with the post process as being there live doing something. It's really turned into something that I genuinely enjoy spending my free time doing. So I love it.
Gotcha. Yeah, I guess to end this kind of subject a little bit, and I do want to segue just quickly after this into audio because I have a question I think that really pertains to Jacob with this audio mess that I had on my end. But with editing, yeah, I started off with, I think it was Windows Movie Maker, honestly, on my laptop because I had no idea, and then realized, because I grew up with Photoshop being around like all my life, and so realized that there's that suite of different software, started using Premiere, and I wanted to pull my hair out because I was having to spend maybe 2-3 hours on like an hour podcast just editing, and it was a nightmare. And then I have to listen to my garbage voice as I'm trying to like sync things up. Oh man, I hated it. But it became more efficient where I just learned some of the shortcuts and what I could do also while we're recording live to try and just bring down that time frame of switching to stuff live and having these these transition images live and that kind of thing. But that just really made that a bit more efficient and easier just on my life, so I could, get back to regular life. But with audio, there was one question I had, and really because we all kind of are now doing the Zoom thing or Discord where we have these separate audio channels, you can kind of manage them easier. But and maybe with you, James, as well, because you used to record with your sister live in that same room. But with Bush League Gaming, you guys are often around a table. And I found, because I have my guest, Gavin, with me right next to me on the couch, I ran into a lot of issues with echo and trying to stop that from happening. Eventually we got it down, but at one point I had 2 different mics and I thought, okay, we got it. Because his voice is always peaking higher than mine because I have just this like low robotic voice. And I thought, okay, I have separate mics, I can adjust those. And then the echo problem happened. And it was just like months of this thing rearing its head and even more editing and blah, blah, blah. But did you experience that, Jacob? How do you get around that whole problem?
That's for you later, Gabe, because I had some technical issues. We're just now talking about technical issues, so you'll need that clap later.
It's happening live.
It's happening live. So
Right.
I honestly never had echo, and that's, so I can't speak to what we did. I can tell you what we did originally though. And I have like this Yamaha mixer, and this is where it gets really weird, is that I'm exporting it actually through, because I ordered the wrong setup. I'm exporting it through like a auxiliary cord, or whatever you call that technically, right? It has audio in and out. And we have 4 mics, and they are like, Gabe, what's the technical term for the plug when it's like for guitars and actual mics? I mean, it's
an XL. Yeah, it's XLR.
XLR. So they're all XLR mics. Yeah, exactly. So they're XLR mics to an XLR mixer. I have everyone's audio tuned specifically to their voice because we cover the range. I get that frustration, Fonz, is like Nick is like so low, quiet whispering, and I'm like pretty loud, and Ryan's pretty loud. So we have these mixed already, but we've never encountered echo. So I can't really speak to what we did. That's just what we're doing now. Go ahead, Gabe.
So I have a question. Were you recording it on the same source, Fonz? Like you're on, like going to the same computer, or was it 2 different computers?
Nope, it was on one of the GoPros. It was there's like a step down where it's just 2 channels. It would be into a GoPro, and then not the GoPro. What's the actual name brand? The GoPro's that camera thing, but it's like the Zoom mic that's super popular. It's the actual unit hub thing. I'm blanking on it, but anyway, it was also those same mics we're talking about. Plug it into a unit, then going into my computer with USB, and I found that like one mic was recording the other mic, and so there'd be a weird echo because they're so close to each other, and I'd have to deal with that. Eventually I did have a setup that fixed it, but there was a while where it was just a nightmare.
Yeah, I think a big thing, and this is for anyone who's listening, any opportunity you have to record on the same source with the same microphones, or at least super similar. So like I worked at a company called Meta Jungle for a while. We were producing content around NFTs, and I made sure like, we needed to all have a similar style microphone. So for us, it was, the SM5B, like is what we ended up getting for, this is the 7B. So the 5B is just a step down, but, it's really easy to EQ and kind of get everything the same if you have a super duper similar microphone. So if like you had one style of mic and he had another style of mic, you're talking about 2 completely different waveforms, right? Kind of going into the computer, even though they're through the same source, the input is completely different. So it's not like you're kind of dealing with the same thing. And I've had issues with that before where, you run into a thing, it's like, oh, I want to have a couple extra people on, and you don't have enough mics. So it's like, oh, well, I'll just use these lapel mics, right? And we'll clap sync, it'll be fine, right? Well, those microphones on those different devices record with different clock rates. So essentially it means while one device is recording at umpteenth second, the second device is recording on umpteenth second, or whatever it is, and getting those to match up, it is almost impossible. So that's why it's super important if you can use similar thing and record on the same source. That's what's going to be
figuring
best
that out
for
with
you,
video.
sure.
Finding out that like video records at a different rate that audio records really blew my mind one time, and I'm sitting here having to be like, wait, we talked the same on both of these and they sound pretty normal, and there's like this just like fine millisecond that just creates that echo or that offset, that you have to sit there and like stretch a video file. That was like new to me. And that's a warning to anybody who's going to do video content, is that sometimes these things just happen and you have to like
Yep.
just Google. Honestly, Google is the thing that solves everything right now.
Educate yourself and remember, like, because if you can, like, literally there would be times where you record everything the exact same way, and it's like, man, why is this happening? And technology, my friends, like, technology is technology gonna technology.
I was
you
gonna
know?
say, man, that's like the one of the golden rules we have over at our show is before we record a lick of audio for anything, we test our entire setup and record like a whole minute or two of just like test footage, test audio, because the amount of times that you think your setup is exactly the same, but for some reason someone is peaking like crazy, or what, anything could happen, but it's like you have to test before you do anything because it's just gonna save you so much time at the very end.
Yeah, and I mean, there's all kinds of visual representation too that and I think once you've done, I think at this point I've done some like 400 podcasts or something like that. Like I've done a bunch, and it's one of those things where it's like you do something enough times. Like for instance, I'm watching my audio right now, and like even if I get super into it, like I can see I'm clearly peaking in the yellow. Right, and as long as you're peaking in the yellow, like you're good. But if you're, like, and those red times are gonna come in. But after doing something for so long, you can, you can kind of correct as you go. Whereas whenever you first start, or like even maybe you've just now started getting comfortable, and like these problems start coming up, it's like maybe you don't feel quite as confident to like adjust on the fly, or like it's like no, my train of thought is focused on exactly what I'm talking about, what I'm saying. Like I'll deal with this later. Well, eventually it gets to a point where it's like, oh, I know what I did. Like I'll just fix this really quick, and you move on. You roll with the punches. And I think that's something I appreciate about all of everyone talking about all this stuff right now is like everybody rolls with the punches, and like you just learn from it, keep going. So there you have it.
And that reminds me of my co-host Gavin would every once in a while like peek over because I'd have my little unit with adjusting the audio and stuff, and you kind of peek over and like, oh, let me toggle this, or like I'm gonna move this mic around. It's like, oh no, don't touch anything, man.
Yeah.
It's all barely hanging on, and it's set as it's set, and you just walked in here, and I have it ready to go for you this way. But he was like, just would chime in and try and mess with our OBS settings. And I'm like, dude, just leave it alone. I've calibrated it. It's like, walk away.
Do you ever find it difficult to manage the production and the audio and these intricate things while also hosting at the same time? Or do you ever encounter that like difficulty of like, okay, I'm listening while also trying to make sure we're on task here, or at least hitting some points, or is that just not a factor for you? I'll start with you, Fonz. I was curious with that point.
Yeah, I'll take away first. I hate it because I'm always I feel like I'm never fully present when what we're talking about. I can't find stuff in my mind as quickly as I want to, or be funny, or just be interesting. It's like because I'm constantly looking at EQ meters and adjusting stuff and looking at the mic or comments. It's like I hate it. I would love to just walk in one day, I could record, bam. I feel like if that could ever happen, I'd be better at what I do. But at the point that as it is now, it's like I'm running the show, so I have to run it and also do the thing. Maybe that makes me better in time. I don't know, but yeah, I hate it, and it's a nightmare.
Yeah, I agree with that. Anyone else have that issue?
To be honest, I've kind of gotten into a thing of like we just kind of set it up before, and to be honest, I don't know if it's our voices or what it is, but I don't find that when we're recording we really have too many instances where I need to change too much on the fly, and then any instances where it really comes up, it's just one or two little things I can fix editing after the fact more so. At least that's, I mean, it's only the same two people every time, right?
Yeah, and I found it's less common with remote, like doing it via like Zoom or Discord. It's like the in-person stuff really gets a little funkier sometimes. At least that's the case for me, where it's just like I'm sitting here looking at a mixer, and it's not straightforward. If you do all remote pretty much, right? Do you have any issues with that?
You're talking to me?
No, Gabe. Sorry.
Oh, Gabe.
Oh, yeah. Sorry. Well, and me and my wife here record. We just recorded our Batman review, in person, and that was the first in-person podcast I had done in quite some time. So yeah, it was a bit of a change, but I think in a way, because I've gotten back to where like I'll have like a little bit of notes, right, of things I want to talk about, and like I feel like there's a thing of whenever you first start doing this, or like maybe again, maybe you're in routine, you don't want to make a mistake, or like in your mind you're like, oh, I have to do this right, like this has to be whatever way. And I think as content creators it's really easy to get so worked up about the production itself, and you're so worried about making a mistake that it kind of takes away a certain fun element for me. Because there was a while, where it's like, no, audio has to be this way, like it has to be done this way, whatever. And I just started realizing, like, okay, that's not, I'd rather have a fun time doing the show, and I'd rather kind of I'd rather have key things in mind to talk about and fly by the seat of my pants. And, everything looks good. I'm not touching anything, right? And just go. And then if there's a mistake in it, I'm not worried about it. I'm not afraid of making a mistake because, it's like, what if it was a really great show, But I also think there's kind of, I mean, I do everything remote, so I find it happening less and less. But yeah, I mean, that in-person stuff, it's all just kind of, I don't know how to say it.
Gabe, you live by.
I don't know how to articulate it.
We're doing it live. That's how you live, right there.
We'll do it live.
Yeah,
exactly. And if something's wrong with it, if people really care and they want to call it out, it's like, then do it, dude. Like, we're making podcasting content. We're not saving lives, right?
You did not pay for this. This was free.
Yeah, this is free. I mean, so it has to be fun. I think that's the main thing, is like, it has to be fun. It has to be fun. So for me, I worry less and less about me peaking. And I used to get super pissed whenever I'd get on to a podcast with someone else and they haven't properly EQ'd and done whatever. And it's like, God, their gain is so freaking high. And now I got to go in and fix it, right? And I have to like listen. Or it's like, dang it, they freaking are eating chips during this or eating anything doing this. And I mean, and I'm guilty of it too. I've ate things before, but the difference is I mute myself, right? I don't leave that audio in there. So I don't know. I think there's a balance to wanting the show to be good versus, okay, I'm taking this so seriously, this isn't fun anymore. And I think that's whenever those times roll around, no matter how minute or how big the issue might be, that's time to reevaluate why you're doing the thing. It's like, are you doing it because it's fun, or are you trying to prove something? So just my 2 cents.
Gotcha. Yeah, let's chip away at some of these general questions. But I love just kind of going whatever direction we want with it. But this one, I don't know how much time you want to spend on it. But as far as setting up the podcast space that you dedicate for, especially all of us are now doing visual stuff. Does it ever come in conflict with your life with dedicating a room that's set up for this particular thing and then like rearranging it, and people are in your house mad at you, significant others or roommates? How do you deal with just having that dedicated pod space? And I'll roll it over to James first, and then we'll keep it going.
Man, it's a juggling act over at my place. I know it looks like really plain and kind of just like, we only just moved a couple months ago, so my fiance and I were kind of getting set up at our new place. And I mean, it's a juggling act because she does the online school and I'm doing podcasts and all this stuff, and I've got some other stuff I do online for what I'm studying too. And it's just, we're always like, hey, I've got a thing at 4:00, like don't plan your podcast for then. Like we use similar space, like she needs to borrow my desk or whatever. But I mean, in terms of setting it up, I feel like I'm just happy that it's a space that I have right now, and I'd love to get some kind of, people do all kinds of cool stuff with their setup. And actually, Fonz and I were talking about this a couple days ago on the show we did, but you have the green screen going on, which is super cool. For me, it's like I just want to keep it nice and simple, but the space itself is just about organizing. It's all about the communication. And I think remote makes it a lot easier though, because you juggle the times, right? Like you're so much more flexible when you don't have to plan like, okay, we all have to get together at this time, and all the things that come along with that. So I think that's really what makes it doable, considering we don't have a lot of space.
Gotcha. What about you, Jacob?
So we've kind of like transitioned through all stages of it, where we originally, started pandemic, we were doing Zoom, and then we moved it to my guest room / office, and I would set up every week, the circular round table, and there's some pictures out there on the internet, and it was just like us three at this like really small table recording on these like really bad mics. And then from there we actually like built a studio. We had this space that was just like part of a family company, part of like this building, and it was just like this junk storage space. So we like ripped everything out, cleaned the walls, repaired the walls, patched them, cleaned the floors, and like just turn this into a space we wanted to be in. And it was the Bushly Gaming Studio. What hits it? What is it? Omicron peaks. I've got a pregnant wife and now an infant. We go back to Zoom. So we've been doing Zoom for the last since Omicron picked up 3 months ago, 2 months ago, 3 months. And we're back to this. So I'm actually I had another kid since we were originally using that guest room. So I have no spare rooms now. This is and I work from home about 90% of the time. I'm in my laundry room right now. This is a laundry room / office. So when you talk about getting creative with space, I love this space though. It's so dedicated. This half is dedicated. I can sit here and turn the dryer on if I need to dry some clothes, but I don't know. I put these panels up to mimic the studio, which we have up at the studio. And it's just kind of turned into, we can do both Zoom and do remote stuff like this, or once we're ready to go back to the studio is there waiting for us. So, that's a little bit harder to sometimes get to, because it's you're driving to locations about 15 minutes from my house, 15 minutes from all of our houses. So this is always the most convenient setup for me, but there's just something about being in the same room as those who you're recording with. There's just energy to it. So we try to get towards that more than anything. So that's our setup.
Gotcha. You, Gabe?
Yeah, my wife's a rock star, and she's really
what
hot,
about the space though?
so
How's that work?
There's that.
He's like, that's it.
We didn't ask that.
I have been really. That's it. Mic drop. I've been really fortunate because our job, it came with a house. Essentially, the house is part of the job. We're glorified babysitters for these cows, right? That's what I've been telling people recently. And it came with a couple extra rooms, like a green room and two guest bedrooms, smaller guest bedrooms. And for me, I saw a space, a dark corner of the house, and I was like, ooh, I can do something, with this that feels very me, So, and my wife was very awesome about it. Do whatever you want, whatever. I have the whole house to do whatever I want. And this was where I'm at right now. Used to be her office and her thing, because she was making jewelry and doing all this other stuff. And for the most part, everything was cool. Anytime I've wanted to do anything, it's been, yeah, okay, whatever. I always consult her opinion whenever it comes to decorating and stuff like that. So, she was very generous with letting me use that space. Well, I got an Oculus and I started accruing more gear and more stuff and more, started becoming more of a content creator. That's what I got the gear and I got the stuff. And, it turned into a thing of I needed more room. I needed more space. And my wife was kind of she kind of quit doing her jewelry making and stuff like this. She didn't really have the passion for it. She doesn't really have to work. Which is cool. She stays at home and takes care of the house and takes care of the animals and does her thing. And I proposed the idea of hey, if you're not using that space anymore, the green room, can I use it? I think I want to use it. And she's like, dude, I think that would literally be perfect. So in a weird way, we've kind of swapped spaces now. I'm still in the middle of moving stuff. It's finally clean in here for the most part. I do see there's a little sound square right there in front of my drums, but for the most part, it looks how I'm wanting it to look. And yeah, we'll do it live. And it's nice recording in a space that you just kind of have complete freedom to do whatever you want. And, she's been down with pretty much any idea, but I have found, there have been challenges getting internet right to the other side of the house. So shout out to Ethernet over power, because, I need internet hooked in directly to my PC to get anything, to make it work at all. So, have that. Papa Elon, please come through with the Starlink anytime would be great. I'd really appreciate it. There have been challenges, trying to get it. And I think James kind of spoke to it, trying to get something scheduled, Yeah. I mean, my wife, she whenever she wants to relax, she wants to be able to do so how she wants. So sometimes I have to be yo, I got a 2 to 3 hour long podcast tonight. Can you watch TV on your iPad? And, it's we pay for data on our iPads. And she's yeah, that's cool. No worries. And sometimes I don't ask her and then I'll lose connection. It's okay, you know what? I shouldn't ask her every time to give up the TV, because that's messed up. And it's if anyone else has a problem with it, they're just gonna have to deal with it. You know what I mean? there's compromise in any type of situation. As far as like, I feel like even just collaborating, right? Trying to make acquaintances, right? Friends on the internet, whatever, and like kind of get in their headspaces and become acquainted with them. That 10, 15 years ago, that wasn't really,
it was niche,
normal, I think, in a lot of ways, right? I don't want to say it's taboo, but you were kind of looked at, right? It was niche. You're kind of looked at like a weirdo if you did this thing. So, like I said, we're both from very conservative backgrounds. We live in a very conservative area. And even just presenting that type of idea of like, hey, like I want to get together with these people, like Bush League Gaming, Fonz, James, and I'm going to do this thing. And the first time she was like, you met him on the internet? And I'm like, yeah, it wasn't like a chat room or whatever. It's just, mutual interest. We've gone back and forth on Twitter, like DM'd, like seemed like cool people, whatever. It's like, whatever. All right. Cool. So even just kind of getting over certain things, right? And continuing to compromise, not only with the spaces and, whether it's something as simple as just not asking her to have to turn the TV off, so she can, I think that's been definitely something that we've just kind of worked through and made work as time has gone on. It's never really been a problem, but it very easily could have been in many aspects, I think.
Yeah, but
so,
on that,
shout out to my wife,
I
Emma.
want to hear your answer to this too, but like that is like, James, you alluded to as well, but there's like the people behind the scenes who aren't part of the podcast that keep it going as well. Like my wife is a rock star. We've got 2 kids, and kids complicate recording times even more than anything. But there's those people like your loved ones, your significant others that are like just as much part of these podcasts behind the scenes supporting you, that I think keeps me going more than any other metric or any other like form of success. Like if they weren't behind us, I think most of you would agree with this, that like it wouldn't be fun to do. It'd be really difficult to do. So shout out to our significant others for putting up with us.
Yeah, I totally echo that too. And it's not even so much like it's the stuff they do to help you with the show, but it's also them being understanding and not being like, oh, you're like, why would you want to do that? What a waste of time. Like, you'd be doing something more productive. Like getting the support to like follow something that you want to do is what is equally as important too.
Yeah, no, shout out to that. Yeah,
Right.
Even just being on board with you having a hobby, it's like, okay, you know what? Yeah, you had video games. That's cool. Like video games, whatever. I can deal with that. No worries. It's like, wait a minute. You're gonna get together with other people across the country.
Usually
and
once
you guys
a
are gonna
week.
talk for
Like,
hours
usually
about
it's
video
like a
games.
weekly
Are you
commitment.
kidding me? It's like, I'm like, yeah, a lot. And I would tell myself like, shout out to people who never change for their spouses. Or they're not spouses because their spouse, the person they were dating or whatever, couldn't get over the fact that they were a gamer or whatever. Shout out to being true to yourself, because I will tell myself, I tried to like give up video games for my wife because I thought that's what she wanted, trying to like be someone else. And I fell into a deep depression. Like it was bad. Like it was really bad. Like 2 weeks. Like I was like, nope, gotta like, can't do this, whatever. And I finally called Emma and I was like, look, I can't give up games. I'm sorry. And if you want to break up because of that, whatever. And she's like,
psycho.
dude, I have never said anything like, why, like you never, it's like, I'm going to break up with you because you're an idiot, not because you play video games, So shout out to that, because having someone that's like, having a significant other that's totally, like you're saying, James, supportive and like not making you feel bad about staying up till 1 or 2 in the morning and getting up for work the next day and, doing your things. That's what you do. Like, shout out to that, because in the movies, right, we see it's like, oh my God, like I can't believe like you're a loser because you're playing video games and blah, blah, blah. Or, or that's like a lot of the stigmas, like you're a loser because you like to play games or whatever. It's like, okay, shout out to the significant others or whatever that don't make you feel that way and continue to like give you the support to make content around it, because
and that's interesting.
It's
you bring
a
up
one-of-a-kind
that stigma, because
so.
I think it's definitely like radically changed recently. It's no different than watching sports, dedicating time per week to doing that. It's the same kind of thing, and it's, I think, because we've all grown up and now you have an older generation growing up playing video games, it's not that weird of a thing. And it's less weird jumping into that podcast space because everyone has one. So it's a little less weird. But I know, touching on that subject you guys were talking about, when I first started, I felt weird like telling my wife. I remember approaching her in the beginning like, do I just like secretly go off with my buddy and because we had another space at the time to record. It's like, do I just do that? Because I don't want to tell her. It seems weird to be like, hey, we're going to start a podcast, as two grown men talking to each other. And then on top of that, about video games, it's like, yeah, you mentioned that loser thing. It's like, I felt that way. And when I brought it up to her, and I remember being nervous, brought it up to her, she's like, yeah, that's cool. I don't care. And same with my family. I didn't want to, right. Nobody cares. And then same with my family. It's like, I didn't want to bring it up or talk about that I was doing that. And then when they found out, like I have a bunch of little cousins and nephews and stuff, and they were, super excited about it. And they would ask me a million questions about it too. And then my family would jump in and watch and jump into the chat too. And we stream. And I found it like, oh, they actually like support it and they don't think it's the lamest thing in the world, which as you're talking about Jake, with like, it helps that stuff behind the scenes. It only helps you keep doing it because I'm not getting, a lot of attention online or people normally, jumping in commenting, but my family's there. So it makes me feel like, okay, there's some kind of community and it's building there. But it's, I've noticed that's been a big help, and it's weird to think back and be nervous about the whole thing.
Well, I think in a lot of ways too, like podcasting and creating content, like unless you're getting paid for it, which I think that's what we're going to talk about next, it is in every sense of the word nerd therapy. Like it really is. I mean, it makes you feel really, really good whenever you make, I think I'll quote Alec Bobko, he always will tweet stuff, he's from Shared Screens. He'll always tweet stuff whenever he's made like an edit he's really proud of that took him X amount of time or whatever. And he uses Twitter as a platform because like he can look back on that and be like, yeah, like I did that, dude. Like, and he's proud of that. And there's just nothing that even comes close because yes, it is a hobby, but it is a release unlike anything you can have. And I feel like it's relatively easy to separate because there's a million other people out there that are way better than us, right? Or better, right? That are doing stuff. So I think we all kind of in the back of our minds know, even just talking to you guys, like, oh, well, if I don't make it, like getting paid, that's fine because it's like James was saying, it's a part of my life now. Like, this is what I do. This is my therapy session. This is my, shout out.
There's room for both. There's room for both
in
your
therapy.
life,
like,
folks.
definitely don't neglect that. But yeah, like definitely like, there's room for both. I'm not saying one replaces the other. I'm just saying, I think there is a level of expression and ownership of opinion that comes with creating your own stuff and even, guesting on other people's stuff like that you just don't get anywhere else. You get like around the water cooler and you're talking about X, Y, and Z and, everybody goes back to their cubicles or whatever. And it's just like, oh, okay, yeah, maybe they didn't really get it. And then you have those conversations with other people where you actually sit down and go in depth about
Gabe,
stuff like this.
You
like
came
what we're
on,
talking about the very nature of the conversation.
Right?
So,
and you had never fully worked through why that game was so important to you, but you knew it was important to you. And it just took like 3 other guys to be like, hey, this might be why.
You ever connected this? And dude, I'm not going to lie to you. After that podcast, I sat at my desk and like, I wept. Like, because I'm not kidding, dude. Like, it was a very like just it was just a very like profound moment, because in a way it kind of felt like maybe things I had held on to for a long time like kind of had closure, like, and kind of had an end in a way. And it's just amazing what this medium can do and all of its various,
like James said,
aspects.
Real therapy like is great. Like what podcasting can do is trick you into like doing therapy passively. Like it's not like professional structured therapy, but it's like a step in that direction where it's like you do get to like talk to someone about your thoughts and emotions around. Totally. And now it's centered around games, right? Real therapy is a bigger picture,
mm-hmm.
But like at the end of the day, games connect with us for a reason. And
right.
I think that's one of the coolest things about what's mm-hmm. this whole process has been for us is just like talking through an art form that, how often do you sit there and talk about art with your bros, right? I keep saying that, like, I say that sarcastically, but I mean it. Like, I don't sit there and say like, oh, hey dude, that painting, man, that was a beautiful painting. It made me feel this way. But like, talk about Spiritfarer and how it made me cry with my friend. Like, that's something that's unique to this medium. So the therapy thing around games, nerd therapy, whatever it is, I'm advocate for therapy. but also like this podcast, weird, passive, unprofessional therapy that's present. That's one of the biggest perks for me as well with my friends, right?
Well, yeah. I mean, you kind of hit it on the head. Like most nerds, like you can talk about, most people are like kind of closed off. Like you read their body language, it's like, oh, they don't want to talk. But the second, like maybe they have a Boba Fett shirt, and it's like, oh, you like Boba Fett, and you get them talking and opening up. In a lot of ways, that's kind of what podcasting is for many, 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 many people. Is like, it's like finally, like I can actually say something without like feeling like I'm going to be judged or like I'm anxious about saying anything in real life or in this area of life. Whereas you get behind the microphone, whether you realize it or not, and I tell every single one of like the people that I have collaborated with, I've done stuff with, like whenever they start podcasting, I'm like, look, there is an element of performance to this that is inherent, like whether you realize it or not. So there's something that has to flip on. Like you got to flip your heart on a little bit whenever you do it, or else it's going to suck, first of all. But you're not going to get like the full enjoyment out of it. And I think when you let that guard down, you just let stuff come out like that, especially about something like a game, then yeah, I think, for me, it's been one of those things of, I kind of want to go do that thing, like that therapy thing, and like try it and do it. But I, 2-3 years ago, you asked that Gabe, and it would have been like, no, like 2 years ago, that's beginning of the pandemic, right? And you go and talk to that Gabe, that Gabe is going to say, hell no, I'm not doing that. But 2 years of whatever this is has definitely contributed to a more positive mindset, so shout out to nerd therapy, shout out to real therapy. Just saying.
Franz, we skipped you though. Yeah,
shout out,
make sure
dude.
we come back to
shout out to
your
all
pod
night
space.
Fonz,
No one cares. Nope.
That's the host to me.
He's
Like,
gone.
nah,
no one
skip
cares.
someone.
No one cares, dude.
No, I mean, I would echo the same stuff you're talking about. It's funny. I think of, as far as an emotional attachment to a pod or conversation online, I had this, and I looked it up real quick. I had this indie dev, and I was blown away that I'm able to randomly get these people that are willing to talk to me with like no influence online. But it's this game called Linda and Joan, and everyone should check it out. So the dev is False Vacuum Game. So I talked to the main dev there, and it's a game about this end of life of this guy's his mother. He had to move back in and kind of help her, and it's just about experiencing that with you seeing a parent grow old and losing them, and we're just chatting about that. And I just, of course, like think of my own family and my own mom, just like imagining going through that with her, and it was just like, it was pretty emotional, just like connecting on that. And it just felt afterwards, it was weird to then pick that apart and go, I just had this connection with someone, over the internet, stranger, but we connected on this thing. And I felt like some kind of growth with, I could at least entertain that possibly happening and working through that. And we both talked about it, and it was just really cool. And it just made me love doing this even more, and just, reignited that fire again.
Because you'd never have it otherwise. Like,
That's
like
true.
It's just, so yeah. Go ahead. Sorry, I cut some.
Oh no, yeah. I was just gonna say one more thought I just had about the whole like nerd culture and the therapy thing is like, even if it's not you yourself getting therapy, I think one of the powerful things about content creators, kind of like small independent channels like we have, is I think it can be inspiring to people that aren't doing it and that they want to see themselves doing even the small stuff that we're doing. So I think that you even can think of it that way too. Like you're probably like eventually someone might see when it's something you've made and it might give them something or bring them out of a place they're into, right? And I think that's something that you might not necessarily ever see, or they might not interact with you, but it's just a nice thing to think about, I guess, if you want to frame it that way, right? Actually be impacting people. Because I know like we all have obviously podcasts that we've listened to probably for years that have had similar effect on us, whether it's a big or a small show or whatever that looks like for you.
Yeah, I think, just to speak to that really quick, I know we have other topics to talk about, but for me, my entrance into like wanting to podcast was kind of funny. It was like, kind of funny of yesteryear. Kind of funny is way different than it used to be, like objectively. It just is, and that's fine. It's not really for me anymore. And I think that's okay. I think that is really, really okay for it to be that way, because that initial impression, right, back in 2017, 2018, and feeling like, oh, I'm not the only one that has these thoughts and feels this way about this thing, is definitely inspiring. And then after you spend enough time with a certain podcast, maybe you find yourself drifting away because you just don't have not only the same ideals as they do, but maybe they've shifted. Maybe they're very vocal about, maybe they're very vocal about X, Y, and Z. Maybe it's politics. Like, well, I don't really want to freaking listen to politics or what's happening in the world. Like, I want to escape and think about video games. I don't want to hear about any of that. So, but at the same time, I know that there's a big audience of people that need that, and want that and like want to be a part of that. And I think kind of what you're saying is rad, is you realize a lot about yourself by hearing other people express very raw type of things and like kind of having those things bubble to the surface, even if it's about a game or whatever it is. And you kind of redirect that at yourself a little bit and like make conclusions about yourself that you maybe didn't notice before. So I totally vibe with what you're saying, Mr. Magnificent. For show.
You gotta call me that every time now, man. It's gonna be a tradition.
Every time, dude. That is that you are the Mr. Magnificent, the fourth horseman.
Okay.
What's next, Fonz?
So this next one isn't as deep, so it's kind of a weird direction, but I just do find it interesting, and we can spend however much time, not very much if you want. But the idea of, and it's tied to what we've been talking about still. So the idea of advertising with your podcast, trying to get it out to people that's the base level of what you're trying to do, right? But there's these options you can follow. You can try and pay for Twitter ads. You could do that. You can, which I've experimented with early on, you can pay for YouTube subscribers. And so I tried that early on just to get the URL, because I think you have to hit 100 subscribers to even like have youtube.com/whatever. And I did that. And then I realized, oh, this is a complete scam, because it just like, they dump a bunch of subscribers, they leave, and then it's like you're at your base level or whatever. But I used that to get the actual URL, so that's cool. Never really did anything later on with that. But you could do Facebook, advertising. How invested are you guys in trying to like naturally grow your stuff versus paying to get out there? And I'll throw it to, let's try Jacob first.
So I point to Gabe on this because Gabe actually tipped me off to this. So up until about a month and a half ago, it was all organic, authentic. And then he brought up YouTube ads, or it's really Google ads is what it comes down to. And it's like officially, because I think what you're describing, Fonz, with subscribers, is that kind of like back channels for subscribers. It's not like through anything official. Is that correct?
It's a random. I think it was. I caught on to one of the bots originally was like, you click here to get like, okay, let's try this just so I can get my 100 subscribers, and it was that way. So I don't know how they do it. They make these fake accounts, then they get deleted, and so you lose that.
Yeah. Sure. So with Google ads or YouTube ads, it's technically Google ads. It's like official. You've seen it in your own channel. It's like literally it says ad in the top right, and it tells you it's an ad or it's before an episode. That's an ad through Google. And Gabe says like, hey, like I've seen this used, he gave me a price range of it. And I was like, okay, I'll give it a shot, because we have a Patreon, and that Patreon funds whatever it's going to be that month or that year, whatever we're saving up for. So I was like, let's just give it a shot. I have this like $150 credit that they gave me to try it out. So we've been trying out YouTube ads, Google ads for the last like month and a half, 2 months, just to see, does this work? Does this do anything? And what I will say, it does give you views. The views don't equate to watch time, right? So think about our content. We're all podcasters. Someone sees an ad in the top right, they click it. Metroid, review. Click on Metroid review, and they're like, oh, this is an hour long, out of it within seconds. So like it equates to a view, but it doesn't equate to watch time. And to me, the goal of any sort of advertisement is to bring people into the community, to bring people in to watch stuff. And we lost Gabe.
Gabe's gone.
Yeah, he mentioned he'll be back in.
He didn't like what you had to say. He just
I ratted him out that he tipped me off to this. So like it does result in views. It doesn't always result in watch time. What I will say is that when I put it on something that's a short form video, maybe a let's play, maybe a clip, that does better, because again, that's more what someone's clicking on an ad for, right? Think about yourself personally. Are you going to click on that ad and want to watch are you ready to watch an hour right now podcast? Usually not.
Yeah,
right?
Especially not if it's a surprise from an ad, right? Like usually you're searching for that out at the first step of what you're looking for.
Yeah, and I'll come back to like one of my favorite. This was on a Let's Play. This is our Radiohead Let's Play, and someone's like, I don't know why your channel was recommended for me, but I'm glad it was recommended, and I'm now a subscriber. Like that is why an ad would be good, right?
Mhm.
It's just, can you put up with how long it takes to get that is really the question. So to me, it's like, this isn't money that I'm spending out of my own pocket. This is like our Patreon is supporting this initiative somewhat. So it's not as financially impactful, but like pretty much what we're doing right now, at least experimenting with, is like $1 a day towards ads. And that's like I can stomach that in contrast to our Patreon. Our Patreon pretty much brings in like $30 to $40 a month, $50 a month. So it's like nothing's out of my personal pocket, and I'm seeing it work in some ways. But guys, like when it comes to growth from like a view perspective or subscriber perspective, YouTube Shorts has done more for us than any sort of advertisement has, and YouTube Shorts are free. So we're still doing YouTube ads or Google ads. Do I recommend it? Maybe. Like, I don't recommend it necessarily for podcast content. I'm still trying to see if it works at all. I see it work here and there. Do it for your short form content. But really, I mean, Shorts has shown us way more growth than any other sort of like initiative that we've done at Bush League.
I missed a lot of that because I dipped out. But I agree with everything I did here, especially on the short form aspect. Short form content is a fraction of what the entirety of the content is, and it's infinitely more work. It's not even close. Like, I can spend easily 45. Like, I'm a pretty fast editor. I mean, it's just hundreds and hundreds of hours of doing it, right? And you have a clear idea of what you want to do. It's still going to take you half an hour to make it, like, at least. But it's like, I feel like once you put more work into it, and we live in this age of like instant gratification, it's got to be fast. So if you're going to put any money into any of it, in my opinion, with my experience, because I did work for a company that, you know, like, we're trying to accrue a following, right? So you put a lot of money into it. There was a marketing budget for marketing the content. Like, that's what you do, because what you are viewing it as a product. But I think there's also the flip side is if you're going to do it, you need to do it like consistently for short form content, at least in my experience. Like, there was a time where, you know, you can target exactly what you want. Like, I want more followers, I want more likes, whatever. And I set aside like $60. It's like, okay, $5 a day, I'm going to boost these 4 or 5 videos, or these 3 or 4 videos for whatever. And yeah, we got followers. Like, there wasn't much engagement though. So I think that's the trade-off, is like, if you're betting on yourself and you have money to spend, yeah, it might be worth the $60 or $70 a month to put out those 2 or 3 TikToks a week and boost them for a couple of days. It might be worth it. I've seen it pay off for a lot of people. If you do anything long enough and you learn how to treat the platform, I think it's all platform to platform. If you treat the platform the way it's supposed to be treated, then I think you can find success with consistency. And I also find, like, you know, whenever I take something I'm going to boost, like, I'll boost it on Facebook / Instagram. So it'll be Facebook, Instagram. You know, now you can have Reels be recommended on Facebook. So you can post content on Instagram that might be found on Facebook. So you have 2 platforms there. You have YouTube Shorts and you have TikTok. So your short form content, if it's all consistent, you're trying to keep it the same length across the board, you can reuse that video 4 different places. You can boost it 4 different places.
When you say boost, are you paying to boost, or are you just posting?
Yeah, I say pay to boost.
Okay,
like,
pay to boost.
However much money it is. Yeah, so I mean, essentially you're marketing it. But, you know, with YouTube, it's more on the nose, right? Because if you're going to boost like a standard YouTube video, which if you're making shorts at all, you're going to be rewarded at some point. You're going to post something that's going to pop off.
Hey,
like, that's what happens.
Gabe, on that note, like, I haven't posted about this anywhere. I've talked about it internally at Bush League. We posted a short like 6-8 months ago, something along those lines. In the last 2 weeks, it popped off. And when I say popped off, it's at 365,000 views. And it's resulted in like subscribe. And this is not boosted at all. We didn't pay for anything with this. This was just natural finding of it. And it's resulted in the biggest subscriber boost we've ever had. And it's just like, again, I posted this 8 months ago, not thinking anything of it. So it's like, to me, the takeaway is, okay, we talked about this earlier in the show. Sometimes the stuff that like you don't expect just does well. And sometimes the stuff that you think's going to do well doesn't do well. And what that does to me is it kind of desensitizes myself to like, just make good content and it might be found. Like, it might be found. Mm-hmm. So to me, it's like the boosting stuff, it like accelerates it a little bit, maybe, right? I can't even say much result from it. I will say, if you guys want to know like actual metrics behind YouTube ad or Google ads, I would say for 1,000 views, it's about $50. And we've never gone down that path all the way, but it's like when I do the math, that's what it takes to get those metrics. And I'm like, I don't know if that's worth it really. But it's all those things that like the metric is fun, but at the end of the day, it's also like community. And like, I would have never met any of you without some sort of growth or like vision, like seeing you promoted in some sort of way. Like usually like the kind of funny audience we mentioned already, that's a very tight knit that it's really easy to connect through people really quickly. And that's kind of like how we connected with most people network wise. But the Google ads is another way that's just like, it's not as efficient as natural. I will say that 100%, but there are efficient ways of like, I still haven't gotten on TikTok. I don't think I will get into TikTok, but like TikTok and shorts and all these like up and coming social media platforms is kind of how you get like at least your name out there quicker. And that's usually free in most cases. So that's kind of like, I don't know, piggybacking off that, short form content, you know, podcast is it's not approachable for most people. It's just not. So like kind of like condensing your content into snippets that kind of sum up you or your show or segments of your show is kind of essential to promotion if you have the time.
Yeah. I'd say if you have the time for it, it is literally crucial, I think, to success, because the next generation, like the generation we're in right now, like I said, like they are, you know, me and James, like he's 29, I'm 26 at this point. Like we're ancient.
I feel like so old, man. I feel so old these days.
Dude, I know. I really do. And it's like, I never thought I would get to this point. But, like, in a way, it's like, look, if you want to appeal to these younger kids and, like, find this voice and this thing, you got to do what they are watching. Like, you have to make the content that they're actually going to watch. Because podcasting, I feel like, is, like, it's pretty broad, obviously, for the most part. But, you know, the people you're wanting to target, you're going to have better success targeting them with short form content. You just are, because there's more people on TikTok than any social media platform, period. So you got to make it there. You got to make that, and you got to be able to have that needs to be a prime focus. And then the supplementary side is almost like your YouTube or your podcast. It's like the real work is actually making the short form content, in my opinion. That's kind of what I've tried to like mentally transition to, because it's like, God, that's what I should be spending my time on, is trying to like literally write the show in such a way to where you can have 3 or 4 short form content videos to post each week if you're going to do a weekly show. And, you know, for all of us with very busy lives, you're one person trying to do this thing. It's hard. It's really hard to do that. So, you know, lots of hot takes and hard truths coming at you. Life ain't easy, but it sure can be. Life is good, but it could be better.
That's a short form clip out right there. Life ain't easy, but it could be.
I couldn't resist. I'm sorry.
What about you, James, with just your experience paying for anything, if you've with advertising?
Yeah, this is kind of the realm where I fall out of the conversation a bit. We really haven't looked into doing any kind of paid ads or anything like that. Like we've done, our 2-year anniversary is in 3 months, I think. So, I mean, up until this point, we've done everything naturally. The only thing we've done that hasn't really been brought up yet, and I don't know if you guys had any experience with this, but when you first started your show, we had a lot of like spammy kind of emails coming into our inbox, and it was like, hey, link up with other podcasters, or like get your show promoted through such and such service and whatever. And
I get stuff about like hot Asians or something like that. I don't get anything about what you're saying.
Yeah, well, I mean,
get a lot of that too.
Yeah. we usually filter those ones to the trash bin, but okay. Yeah. But there was a few. I mean, we didn't really interact with them, but there was one that was called Audrey, and for whatever reason, Katie actually she just had some free time, and she actually signed up for that, and it culminated. I don't know if anyone who follows our show would probably see us interacting with Loud Thumbs here and there, the guys over there. We actually met them through Audrey, and so they actually hit us up through that. And I guess it's like we didn't really expect it to go anywhere, but it hasn't beyond that either. But we've done a few little crossover episodes with them, and we've gotten to know them pretty well, so it's successful in that way. But it's not really the same as marketing. That's more like hey, meet other people doing the same thing as you. I don't know if we'll do marketing in the future. Like what you guys are saying about Google Ads isn't exactly, glamorous for what we're looking for. But I think you're right.
It's trash.
The short form stuff is really, I guess, the next sort of bastion. But that's a whole new thing because I don't have TikTok and I don't want to get TikTok.
Don't do it.
Yeah. Well, that's the thing is, it's so subtle too. Like TikTok is so subtle because everything's internal. So like, you want to promote something, it's super easy to do so. Whereas if you're going to promote something on YouTube, it's very clearly going to be an advertisement.
Yeah.
And there's no subtlety. It's not like it just pops up while you're watching a video. It's not like it just pops up on the side just like everything else. It does, but it's like, oh, this is clearly an ad. It's like, well, that's stupid. I don't want that. And on the other side, it's like, I don't want an hour-long podcast at the front of someone's YouTube video. That's dumb.
Yeah.
So, I think, going back to the original question, this is just my opinion. I think it's worth it if you're trying to grow your audience, but it's also going to cost, just like anything else, because you are part of a bigger supply. Like with podcasters, like it's all supply. Like there's there's hundreds of thousands of podcasts out there competing for people's time. And, I've heard it said on a show before is like, I had Mike Doherty, who's from Chiptooth Gaming and also Play Everything. He's like, why would people who have, 10 podcasts they listen to from the big guys that do it so much more better than us, why would we try and do the same thing that they're trying to do? And it's like, well, sounds to me like there's a priority shift. You know what I mean? It's like, are you making it because you want to be big? Or are you making it because you genuinely enjoy it? And I think surrounding yourselves with people, not only other podcasters, but making that very clear. It's like, look, I do this because it's fun and I want to connect with an audience. There's nothing that you can, there's not much that you can say against that. Like, whenever it comes to that.
I think like long term, that's the way that you will grow too, because eventually you might pick up those audience members slowly but surely. But they're going to be people that like those conversations and want to interact, not just 100,000 bots that are from wherever, or like shuffled in with one person that actually might be in that crowd.
It's definitely
the natural.
Yeah, so
it definitely feels like exponential.
Yeah.
Sorry, go ahead.
YouTube advertising, it's an accelerant. Is it a good accelerant? I don't know. I still can't define it. So I'm looking at something right now that we did for short form content. It's short form ish content. It was a Let's Play, and there's about 300 views that were from advertisement, and 2 subscribers came out of it. Actually, to me, that is a win, right? I mean, 2 subscribers coming out of that. I don't know how much that comes out monetarily wise, but like getting it's less about the click and more about the person who's going to come back. It's about the subscriber. Yes. So
right.
I don't recommend it. I don't. I recommend putting your resources and time into things like shorts and stuff like that. That does it does reach more people at a cost of free. Really, it doesn't cost you anything.
Well said.
Gotcha. Now we're rounding out, getting closer to 2 hours. If you want to maybe tackle one more topic and maybe wrap it up, it's up to you guys. But this kind of general end question here.
Yeah, I say I'm down with whatever you got. What you pick, Fonz. You've been really quiet this whole time. You know what I mean?
I'm just letting you guys do your thing and jumping in. When I fit in,
I've got
pretty
the
much.
night.
But no,
I've got the rest of the night for you.
Yeah, I do too. Like I'm
Okay.
down. Like my wife texts me. My wife texts me at 10 o'clock. It's 10 p.m. here, or it's almost 11 p.m. here. Actually, she texted me at 10 p.m. and was like, "I'm going to bed." So,
the kids are asleep. The wife is asleep.
Yeah,
I'm here for the night, boys, and I'm gonna play some. Elden Ring.
I mean, I just don't sleep. I'm going to play Elden Ring right after
Let's
this.
do it.
In fact,
Okay.
I stopped playing Elden Ring to come and do.
Let's get that weird finger thing and let's co-op, right? Let's do that.
Oh man, I'm so frightened about co-op and all the fingers.
So many fingers in that game. What in the world?
Try finger butthole.
I've seen that.
Yeah, try finger butthole. Like that's like first thing I saw whenever I booted up the game.
It's a weird game.
I have no idea.
Yeah, Fonz is like, I have no idea. I do think it might be beneficial. I could definitely benefit from a short pee break. So
always,
Gabe. You're.
Gabe, just answer the next question first and just go during the podcast.
Okay, yeah, that's okay.
That's
let's do it.
plan.
I'll go first. Ask it. Ask away, Fonz.
Okay, so at least going with order because James did mention something about the idea of wanting to naturally kind of find these people that are interested in them and then kind of getting that fan base there. And that reminds me of making YouTube thumbnails and the whole dichotomy of the decision making with, do I want this like there's a classic surprise, shock look. You'll never guess what's going to happen. The arrow pointing to the thing, which would get you more clicks. But then it's like, do I want those people or kids, basically, watching my content? How do you manage, how you craft your stuff, at least visually, when it comes to thumbnails in your podcast? And maybe, Gabe, if you want to answer right away, and then you can dip out.
Yeah, I say I got to pee really bad.
Or we can continue on, or you go pee, and you're right back in the mix.
No. Gabe, you go. I'm going to go pee.
Okay, yeah.
That's what happens when you wait.
We should all leave. We should all leave, and Gabe should answer it by himself.
That's great. Yes.
Go ahead, Gabe.
The thumbnail thing is, it really is a psychological thing, because to me, it's like I don't really like clickbait, and I don't watch a lot of YouTube because I don't like most people. Like,
same.
I don't watch a lot of YouTube videos. So I had to force myself to like do research and like see, people. I was past the point, I'll never forget. It's like, yeah, there's this YouTuber I watch. I'm like, you literally watch someone consistently? Like, how is that even possible, right? And I still haven't quite wrapped my mind around that. And here I am now doing YouTube, expecting people to do the thing for me, and I just genuinely have not clicked with many people, except Bailey Sarian. God bless her. She does makeup and talks about murder mystery. It's amazing. But whenever it comes to thumbnails, man, like, I want the idea to be clearly concise, but I also want there to be, I do think you can make something that's kind of clickbaity, but is also genuine. You know what I mean? Oh, my headset just died. Hold on.
Look at that perfectly timed
I don't know
trade.
if that makes sense. Because, like, for instance, can you guys say something?
You were leaving.
Yeah.
I can't hear you at all.
We can
So
hear
Gabe's
you.
transitioning his
You're
headphones
good. You
died.
can just
Hold
keep
on.
talking,
Gotcha.
Gabe. Just
What's happening?
James, his headset died, so he was switching
Oh,
headsets.
no kidding.
Anyways,
I thought I came back at like the peak time.
but
That would have been sweet. He's
I don't know why.
we can.
Oh, it's because it's not plugged in. I'll get it in a second.
Well, come on.
What
you have an
is
audio
your first-
degree
I
or
try to
something,
just be
right?
as genuine as I possibly can, while like putting something interesting out there. Because if you make a thumbnail and you're like, oh, this is the best thing ever, people are like, oh, well, this guy's obviously, he thinks it's the best thing ever, so why would I watch the video? He already gave it to me. But I feel like posing a general question is the best way to go without being too clickbaity. And I've definitely gone the clickbaity route where I'm hating on Xbox because they suck. Or whatever, and it's like, I obviously like the new Halo is going to be trash, or like the Steam Deck, is never going to be better. Like the Steam Deck but then I feel like there's a danger to that, because then people miss the point of the conversation because of the thumbnail. So it's like they get a preconceived notion before they even hit play on your video. So I'm kind of against being so clickbaity, but I definitely want to post something that makes someone want to click. And it's just a fine line for me personally. It's really hard. I hate making thumbnails. Like, it goes beyond like looking at a thumbnail and being like, ooh, I like the way that looks. Very rarely do I actually make thumbnails where I'm like, ooh, I actually like the way that looks, and more recently I have been, but it's taken 200, 300 videos to do it. So that's kind of where I stand with that. I'm going to plug this in, and then I'm going to go pee. So sorry if I miss you guys' whatever.
Yeah, James, if you want to take over, same.
Yeah, thumbnails. So, I mean, we've had a few different versions. We have like a few templates we use based on kind of what show, if we're talking about the news or more about certain games we're playing and all that. But, I mean, it's pretty basic on my behalf. I mean, admittedly, obviously not a huge visual designer. So, I mean, it's not like I got some crazy Photoshop skills and all that. Pretty much just tend to make it like picture of one of the main topics we're talking about on the show, right? And other than that, just kind of keep it simple. But I think it's just one of those things where I'm personally like, I don't really have any interest in doing the clickbait thing whatsoever. I feel like those are the kind of videos that actually make me the viewer not want to click them. So that's kind of like just what I want to echo in what I'm making. And it's, again, not to say like what I'm making is great, because I think it's something that I could really improve or, change what we're doing. But at least it feels more along the lines of like what I would want to view, right? And I think that's just kind of where I stand with it. I totally get doing the clickbait thing if you want to, kind of paint that broad brush over those style of thumbnails. But at the same time too, I think Gabe made a really good point of like what kind of people are those bringing in, because if you just post kind of a hot take, I think those are the kind of people that are gonna come in like supercharged with the opposite take and just like go in the comments at you or something, right? And so I think it defeats the point of like if we want to have a conversation, then we want to encourage people at least to come and listen. And I don't know if how much of that really matters on the thumbnail, but maybe that's just the way I view it in my head. And then maybe that's what I got to say on that.
Yeah, you, Jacob.
So I have like I take immense pride in making thumbnails, and it's something that emerged from this whole process that I didn't expect at all. I have no design background at all. I work in the science industry, but it just turned into like, how good can I make this? And I'm going back through them to see like, because like the clickbait, it's like it's a sliding scale, right? It's not just like this is clickbait and this is not clickbait. It's like there's a gray area, and the core of what we do that's probably the closest to it is putting a question mark at the end of something. But that question mark is usually like the topic of the conversation, or at least one of the topics of the conversation. There's one in here that's like the closest to clickbait that I don't regret necessarily, but it is, the title is Apple Arcade coming to PlayStation. And it's literally, we talk about for 6 minutes, could that happen, right? It's not happening. There's a question mark at the end. That's how I justified that thumbnail. The closest I've come to clickbait. For the most part, I sit there and design things like, okay, how do I make things like, the first thing I do whenever I make a video is I Google what I would search for if I wanted, or on YouTube, I search for that video basically. So Metroid Dread review. I YouTube search that and see what the top 10 videos that come up are the same thumbnail, and I hate it. It bothers me so much that the same 10 thumbnails get the same 10 view count, whatever it is. So I first go through maybe the first like 50 to 100, and I go, I'm not going to make any of these thumbnails. And then I'll go in and design something, and I'll pull key art or PNGs, and I'll create my own thumbnail. And I love it. I absolutely love making thumbnails. And it's always with the goal of how do I make something unique that is appealing to myself. And it always comes back to like, am I okay publishing this thumbnail? The hardest ones to make are the ones that are around news topics, because we cover like 6-7 news topics, and I'm like, I have to pick one topic really to make the thumbnail about. I don't like doing those ones. I like doing ones that are about reviews or about a bigger discussion topic. So core of question, I love making thumbnails. I try to avoid anything that's clickbait. If there's anything that ever looks clickbait to you guys, please tell me, because I want to be aware of that. But like I said, it's a sliding scale, right? I'll say something like Microsoft working on their own metaverse. I'm reading that right now. It's because we just talked about it for like 10 minutes. I'm like, do we think this is happening? I'll never put something in the title that isn't like covered for a large amount of the video. So do I think they work? I don't know. I really don't know if it matters. But I know for myself personally, I have to make a good thumbnail to publish it. It's just a weird broken part of me that I have to do it.
Yeah, I share the same kind of thoughts with you, Jacob, where I more hate it, where I hate it when I feel like I can't compile something that doesn't make me happy. But when I do, at least for myself, feel like, okay, I like the balancing, how I've had this thumbnail arranged, I feel good about it. It's like, cool. And then, that video goes nowhere or whatever. And it's like, okay, that was worth nothing. Or I spent all this time. But I did try experimenting with including our faces in the thumb versus just like an actual background. I always respected, and it's weird because this is not an old medium, but I respect these thumbnails that treat it almost like an album cover, where it's kind of like an image. Maybe you have a text on there, or it's just your logo in an image, and that title has your intro for what you're talking about. I really dig that. But I wonder if the bigger podcasts can get away with that kind of thing, because you already know what you're getting into. You're a fan of the show. But I always love when they do that. So I would play around with kind of imitating that kind of style, or versus having our actual faces, maybe some kind of reaction, just to show these are two human beings on the show. These are who they are. And I didn't notice a big difference in, clickability or that kind of thing. So I just I find myself liking to include us both, just because we're two people on the show. So I'll have some visual form of us in a thumbnail, and sometimes I won't. Sometimes it'll just be an image or two, images compiled together with a kind of title. But it's just a weird, interesting topic, and it kind of ties to the advertising side of things, where it's like you want to get it out there, and you want to be somewhat approachable, clickable, but at the same time, at the cost of your soul, it feels like, across the board, where it's like, I don't want to be those guys, but also I want to, stand out. So it's tough, but I dabble back and forth with the whole thing as well.
When you have a
Gabe, I think you answered and you jumped out, but carry on, Jacob.
When you have a green screen, are you able to just to crop out your guys' selves a lot quicker, or are you still going in manually?
Well, because of how we record, so there is a green screen behind us, but OBS will then overlay that background. So when I go in and edit in Adobe, I have the file that actually has whatever that image behind us is. So I don't have that raw green screen. I did experiment with like recording two different setups at the same time where we have a green screen behind us, but I found that it's like, I'm just going to go and click us out anyway. So I found myself doing that.
You're just taking a frame. You're taking a frame from that episode then, is what you're doing.
I am, yeah, through OBS, just take an image.
If you go back and look, like the last 6 months, most of 2021 of our video content, we have exactly what you're describing, our faces from the actual episode. And to do that, I'm sitting there going and lassoing our entire bodies, 3-4 people usually, and putting that on the thumbnail. And I walked away from doing that. I don't know if it matters, but I've been able to come up with something with I'm more satisfied with, where it doesn't have to include us. To me, when I was including those, I was like, this is a podcast. See the mics? There's 4 of us and we're talking. Right. I don't convey that anymore. It's just simply a thumbnail that I'm proud of. And that's what I put out there, because it takes me so long to sit there and lasso 4 people and make it look nice to what I want. So yeah, thumbnails are weird, man. I don't know. I don't know if at our stages right now, if it matters that much. That sounds weird, but like, I think it really matters when, like, unfortunately, the clickbaity stuff does work too. I see it all over YouTube, and it's always the top stuff. So to me, it's like, do what is the most efficient for yourself and what you're okay with, right? And to me, it's like, I just like making them now. And that's, no matter how good or bad the video does, I'm going to make a thumbnail that I'm satisfied with. But I don't ever correlate that to, I need to make a good thumbnail for views. I don't think it equates to that right now. Not at all.
Yeah, I feel the same way.
I think it's especially true too, because technically like half of your platform is just audio only podcasts, right? Like, a lot of your audience won't even see that you're doing thumbnails, because like, or at least that's how we treat our show. I think we're a podcast first and a YouTube channel second, or at least that's kind of what we've stuck to. So for me, I think if the switch was ever to happen to where our viewership was more on YouTube, then maybe, would put like, oh, maybe these thumbnails should be more. But it's kind of a chicken or egg situation too, when you think too.
Absolutely.
Yeah, it's weird where I approached it early on, focusing on the video being the main thing and focusing on YouTube too. And almost where I think we went about a good year where I really didn't upload any audio. It was just focused on YouTube, because I am a fan of, I'll watch podcasts on YouTube and a lot of content through there too. So I just, as a fan, I kind of geared that direction. But then I found when I finally started including audios, MP3s, there is a lot of growth there. And there's actually, I just saw more potential there, more people interested. It's like, okay, I should have been doing this from the get-go, but I just had that weird video bug where I just wanted to focus on that.
That's so funny.
Yeah, I came at it
it's so funny you say, because for us it was like, I used to just upload our audio only to YouTube with no video at all. Like, we just put a static image and just have that, because it was a free way to put out more content. And then we were like, hey, we may as well just turn the webcams on, right? We're recording remotely anyway. Why not? As long as we can figure it out. And then that's kind of where YouTube started for us.
Same, completely in the same boat. Yeah, it was a podcast first, YouTube later. And the thing I like about YouTube is that it does give you a little bit more concrete metrics behind what is doing well. I feel like we use Anchor, and Anchor's like, you got this many views.
It's vague.
Where'd they come from? We don't know, but you got this many views. What platform was it? We don't know what platform it was, but you got this many views. How many subscribers do we have? You got this many views. Like, Anchor tells you nothing,
literally,
but like, it makes it super easy. Like, when you talk about doing video content, well, now Anchor uploads video to Spotify, which is like, Spotify is trying to get into video content. So it's such a weird thing. I mean, this beast that we're navigating is changing on like podcasts are still in their infancy. I think. I think it's growing faster than people can keep up with. Um, People like Spotify are seeing that and they're trying to grow that as fast as possible. But yeah, I don't know. Thumbnails to get to the core of the question, where podcasts, right? So thumbnails probably don't matter too much to a podcast. You either know you want to listen to these people or you usually don't. It's a good way to bring people in for a couple seconds, maybe, and maybe you can grab them. But if you like making them, you don't, or if you do, you don't. I don't know. It's kind of like, you know, if you like them or not.
Well, that's the thing too, is like the great Roberta Blake, which if you don't know who Roberta Blake is, you need to, because he is a YouTuber, like successful YouTuber, 500,000 followers. He makes $100,000 a year. Like, oh, or no, I'm sorry. No, he actually just released the other day. He makes hundreds of thousands of dollars every year just from brand deals, YouTube, like his whole online presence is what makes him money. And he talks about it. He's like, my personality, like, should not have made me successful with YouTube. He's like, I am not a personable person. My takes are not popular. Like, I am not like your typical person. He's like, so that just shows anyone can do it. He's like, one thing you want to, like, there's two things you want to remember, like, whenever trying to, like, move into the space of, like, the marketing aspect is when you make a thumbnail, he's like, would that pass? Would that get by someone who had 1 million subscribers? Like, would they be happy with that? If they had 1 million subs, like, are they going to be happy with that thumbnail? And then also, using that knowledge, whatever your, like, audience retention is, right? You can bank 1%. Like, whoever views that video, you get to make a video that has 100,000 views or whatever. You can usually bank on 1% of that showing up. Usually, you know, that's like the rule, like with YouTube technically. And shorts is a whole other ball game, but it's like, it's only natural. Like, if you get 100,000 views on your channel overall, you should have about 1,000 subscribers. And, you know, if you go and look at your analytics, if you have a YouTube channel, you'll be able to tell really quick that that's actually pretty close. It may not be exact, but it'll probably be pretty close. So there also lies in a thing of like, okay, let's say 1,000 people just see your thumbnail. You know what I mean? Like, it's recommended to them. You can bank on like 1% of those people at least clicking on it. So then it's like, okay, out of that 1% of people, then another fraction of that are other people that are probably actually going to be showing up and returning to consume your content. So like, whenever you like break down the math, I know like Jacob likes to break down the math of stuff. Like, when you break down the math of it, it kind of allows you a little bit of freedom to play, because I've spent hours making thumbnails before with no difference, no shift in anything. So to me, it's like, how much of my time do I want to sacrifice to convey the same idea? Like, how many times am I really going to move this text around? It's like, once something looks right, it's like, does this work? It works fine. Okay, if it works fine, that's all I need it to be. Which is why I have my wife look over almost every thumbnail I make except for reaction stuff, because, you know, a reaction video is a reaction video. So anyways, that just made me think of that.
Yeah, it's wild, and it's a whole side of things, because it then dips into like just psychology and a whole bag of worms, but can of worms.
Psychology and math.
Yeah, and I want nothing to do with either of those. So
yeah, me either.
That's why you're podcasting and not whatever involves those things.
Not a
marketing, math. I don't know.
Literally. Oh, God.
All right, so then now transitioning into this next one here, we kind of talked about this lightly, but managing time with editing, recording, and then having a regular life. So whether you live with people or not, and just having to deal with putting something aside, finding an endpoint, and carrying on your life. Like, I know with my wife and I, we've definitely had arguments where, you know, it's like, oh, whose turn is it to make dinner? Or dinner's done, and where are you? And it's like, I'm working on, like we said, this thumbnail that no one's going to care about or see, or editing. How do you guys manage that with everyday life? And Gabe, I'll switch over to you.
I am not the best person to ask this question a lot of the time, because I feel like the traditional 9 to 5, 5 days a week, that's not me, man. Like, it's just not. I work a bunch of different jobs at different times. I have about 3 different jobs. that I'm kind of in control of. I give guitar lessons. We watch this farm and take care of these cows, and I work for someone else just 2 days a week. So I have a lot of freedom whenever it comes to my time. And the 2 days a week I work, like I could literally stop any time I wanted, like during the day, and be done. So for me, it's one of those things of I try and set aside a time, whatever free time I can find that doesn't conflict with me actually either consuming content or playing a game. And I try and really like devote at least a good half day to any. It's like, okay, I look in the queue. It's like, what projects do I have? It's like, okay, I need to. This project has been uploaded on Game Club forever. Okay, when's the last time I put out a Game Club episode? It's like, okay, like a month ago. It's like, all right, I still got a little bit of time. Then I look. It's like, okay, what needs to happen right now? So I try and make it to where I can get as much done as I can in about a half a day, a 3 or 4 hour span of time. So if I can block out 3 or 4 hours of time, I can usually listen to a couple of our shows that we've done, figure out what TikToks I want to make out of them, and at least push that content out or schedule that long form content. And then I go back to my notes later and make the other stuff at a later time once that content is actually releasing, because we'll spend a lot of time recording a bunch of stuff ahead of time, and then I just kind of figure it out the next few weeks. So we really steer away from anything that's super topical, and when we do talk about something that's topical, like that show has to go out that day. So, it's just this kind of thing of I'm able to find a lot of free time during the week to work on stuff a lot of the time. And my wife's really cool about it too, like, because she's at home, she works on the house, here and stuff. But there have been times, right, like kind of what you're saying, where you want to finish something, especially like with whenever I would do like a game review or something, I'd be super into like requires like a million edits to do whatever, get the point across. And it's like I'm wanting to finish the video. It's like, hey, you haven't come out of your room in like 6 hours. So how about you like come eat with me and like hang out with me because you've been in here all day. And in a way, it's kind of like, it kind of frustrates you a little bit because you're like, no, like you don't get it. Like I want to finish this like right now, but you can't. Like as a good human being, you should not like push to finish it right then. Like you got to step away. So I think there's certain times where you can't give a project the attention it deserves or that it needs to be completed. Like you kind of have to put it on the back burner because it's not your bread and butter, and it really doesn't matter that much. Whenever you boil it down to it. So for me, it's just constant communication with my wife, like letting her know kind of, what's going on, what I'm kind of thinking for the week, of when I want to record and all that stuff. Like it's a decent balance, but it does take effort, because if I'm not putting effort into like communication, I think it can go unchecked very easily. And then I find myself just working on content like all the time. And that's just not healthy at all. And I could totally do it. Like there was a time period, especially like a year ago, that's all I did, man. Like, because I worked from home, I had my own, like I had a small business, like I was doing, so I would work for I would literally work for 2 or 3 hours, make my scratch, like good money. Be like, all right, peace. I'm gonna literally work on content all day, and I literally wouldn't leave. I would literally only leave to get food and go pee. That's it. So, it definitely requires effort to keep things in balance and, keep it in check for sure.
Awesome. I'll switch over to you, James.
So Google Calendar controls my life. And if I didn't have Google Calendar, I don't think I would be here right now. I wouldn't have made it to work yesterday, and I wouldn't be wherever I'm supposed to be tomorrow. It saves my life. And I think if like just sharing my plans and my schedule makes it so much easier when it comes to like making sure I've got quite enough space to record, making sure Kate or whoever else is coming on the show is free. Like that's the way that it's all done for me. And something else too is like it's just about working smarter, not harder. I found that sometimes when you get really burnt out, if it's a creative field, like I actually am working in a creative field right now as well. I kind of working in UX and UI design, and it's similar in the sense of like sometimes 20 minutes of work, not every 20 minutes of work is the same value, right? Like taking a break, coming back to something, I feel like saves me a lot of time just because you get that fresh set of eyes on it. And so I feel like I think someone said before, I can't remember who it was, but you mentioned like getting into a routine, you get like you have a certain process you follow putting these videos together. And I think just honing that and making it more efficient is kind of the way you can do more with the same amount of time. And I think that really helped. Like about, I want to say it was like 7 or 8 months ago now, we switched from a bi-weekly show to doing like a weekly video. And I'm glad that we started off slower doing the bi-weekly thing before stepping up to bi-week or to weekly instead of having to pare back and overreaching at the start, because it's so hard to budget some of the time you spend on some of these projects, or like if something goes wrong, how long it will take to fix it, or how you underestimate, I wanted to write a bit of a script or like, do some background research on X topic or X game, and like, wow, I found myself down a rabbit hole that was 2 hours longer than I thought it was going to be. And so I guess like when it comes to time stuff though, like for me, it's all about like, I'm such a planner, like I love to slot things into, as I said, Google Calendar. And as long as it's on there, I feel like I can follow it. And then it's just about, efficiency and like doing the best way you can to save yourself the time. Because, like you were saying too, Jacob, like cutting out everyone's little thing with the lasso tool. It's like you have to time box yourself and just make the best content, I think, within like whatever time you want to give, rather than limitless kind of like, how far is this going to go? Because otherwise you just end up, locked in that room for 6 hours and you never see outside. So you gotta put the reins on somewhere.
Yeah, so I'll hop in. So yeah, it's all about finding that efficiency. Reiterating that the efficiency thing, James, absolutely. What matters, what doesn't matter. Are you being a perfectionist? Really cut that stuff out. Gabe, communicating with the loved ones around you, that is essential. I always, and like all of you be my witness, I am ready to walk away from Bush League Gaming tomorrow if it impedes on my personal life, whether that's family or friends. I love this stuff. It is not more important than my friends and family. That's what it comes down to. And especially after having a second kid now, I even emphasize that more, but also that time's even harder to find now. So I do appreciate it more and more. So yeah, managing it's communication. It's doing it in those like little windows that I have. Like the hardest thing too now is that with content creation, there has to be time for content consumption, right? We've been here for 2 hours plus now. That's 2 hours plus that I could have been playing Elden Ring, right? So you make these sacrifices when you make content, and you have to really assess, do you enjoy that more than the content sometimes? And I think most of us speak to it that we do. Right? We wouldn't do it if we didn't. But it's like this whole balance thing, especially when you're, almost 2 years in. I think we're all at least close to 2 years into this, or 2+ years. And yeah, it's you have to get creative with time. That's like sometimes I wake up really early to do something or stay up really late to do something, but all keeping that in check of life, right? This isn't more important than the people around me. That's kind of my emphasis when I, how do you manage your time? I find whatever I can without it impeding on those around me. And my wife's so supportive, but that's the core of what I come back to when it's my wife and family and kids and friends come first, then my job, my day job, and then this is after that. So if I have time after those things, I'll use it. And if I don't, sometimes Bush League Gaming might go bi-weekly, right? James, you talk about not overstepping too much. Well, we've been doing weekly since the last year and a half, but is there a day and age where Bush League goes to bi-weekly or just taking breaks in here? And maybe. I don't want that to be the case, but I will if it's necessary. So that's kind of my answer to that question.
Yeah, I think like you said, efficiency is super important with, I know on our end, using OBS has been, and finally understanding it enough to where I can, in real time, maybe I want B-roll from a trailer we're breaking down or a movie trailer too, or I want to actually see the article that we're referencing with whatever news story. If I can pull it up while we're recording and have it still transition the way I want it to, so I don't have to then go into editing and having just to break that down afterwards or switching cameras. It's like if I can do that, which I found out over time, while we're recording, it just saves me so much time editing. So it's just trial and error and just kind of getting experience of like, oh, I can figure this way out. I can have better, tips on exporting stuff a little bit faster. It's like, it's all just from repetition and learning. But if you can do that, then that frees you up to then have a regular life and balance that out. But yeah, Gabe, you jumped out, but I think you wanted to mention something as well.
Oh, I was just going to say, like, yeah, I mean, it's such a big part of my life to do this, but kind of like what Jacob was saying, like if my wife came to me and was like, look, I can't deal with this anymore. Yeah, I would like want to identify like, okay, this is a change, but like, whatever. And I think being able to be flexible, right? Flexible with your outlook and say, okay, for instance, Keeping It Real, one of the shows we have, it used to be like every week, and then it kind of went to like a couple times a month, and it's like I just don't have the same fervor. Like I'd rather spend my time doing other things, and I still want to do the show. So it's like, okay, once a month. That takes a huge load off of me for a lot of stuff. A lot of things that were happening with that particular show, and it's like, does it make me sad? Yeah, but at the same time, that's more time that I now have to like spend with Emma. And like me and Emma make content together, like a guy and his wife, dude. Like we make stuff together and it's super rad. And I know I should be like helping her with like editing and like giving input and like giving feedback and stuff. And she would never ask me to take away anything else. But if it came down to it, I would. I think the content consumption thing is really pertinent to the conversation as well, because so many times I see my peers just constantly tweeting, and I mean constantly, about X, Y, and Z, and it's like, bruh, no one cares. Like, that's what I want to tell people sometimes. It's like, I will literally just creep on Twitter and like read what people are saying, and it's like, it is just incessant at times. And it's like, why don't you spend your time not doing that? Because to me, it's like the unfollow button's looking really tempting, and it's like, as long as they're still following me, it's like, okay, well, I'm not going to do it. Maybe I'll just mute you for a while or whatever. And to me, I'm thinking there's no way you can concentrate on the content you are trying to consume if you're tweeting nonstop. And it just gets old after a while. So I think fully, and I am guilty of playing a game and watching something at the same time. I've been doing it since I was like 5, 6 years old. So I kind of have to I have like weird ADD that way. But I can generally get the sense of both things that I'm playing. Now, I'm not going to like play like The Last of Us and watch a TV show. Like it's a completely different thing. But like Destiny or even Elden Ring, you know what I mean? At a certain point, it's like, okay, I get it. I'm going to keep going and I'm going to watch, King of the Hill or whatever while I play and do whatever. You have to like fully focus on that. And I don't know how religious everybody is, but like there's a lot of benefit that comes from like meditation, just in terms of like really trying to process like everything that you've consumed. And at least for me, it's like what I've learned is the amount of time you spend doing the actual study is like the amount of time like you can spend actually dwelling and like really trying to soak in what you've consumed. And it totally is the same way with games and movies and television and whatever. It's like, I don't really, unless it's like something super new, like the Batman, it was like, I look back on my Batman review and I'm kind of pissed because I spent a couple days thinking about it, and it's like, yeah, this is the best damn Batman movie that's ever come out, period. Like, and it's frustrating because I was so hung up on one little detail and I didn't give myself time to process that it was actually a good thing. So, yeah, I mean, not only consuming the content, but not feeling like you have to, like, say every little thing because you're worried that your followers aren't going to hear your opinion on it. It's like, they're going to hear it eventually. It doesn't have to be so incessant, So,
to jump...
I don't know, I just kind of...
To jump in on that, too, another interesting point, I think, is, like, you mentioned, like, meditation and taking the time to think. Well, I found, like, the process, like, now doing the podcast for this amount of time is, like, I like to actually take the time to consider what it is we're talking about too. Like back in the earlier days, I feel like it used to be a lot more like, okay, I just played, The Last of Us 2, like you just said. Okay, what does Waypoint think about this? What does Kind of Funny think about this? What's the IGN? I would just listen to like 5 or 6 different podcasts and get all these different opinions. But then when it came to our show and coming on our content, it's almost like you sit there for a second and you're like, oh, I haven't actually thought about what I think. Like, I'm just kind of amalgamating these ideas in my head of what other people have said. And so now I've actually made it a practice for myself of like, even like whatever short commute I've got, I'm not going to listen to a podcast today. I'm going to like drive actually just with like some quiet, like no lyrics music, and actually think about what I think about this and use it as like that kind of meditative time. And I think it's really helped in terms of that piece of like forming your own opinion.
Dude,
on stuff. Yeah.
You are, I love you for what you just said, because as soon as, because you realize, and it's, for me, I kind of had this moment, it's like, oh, like you just kind of treat what these podcasters are saying is like gospel because they're professionals. And you realize the only thing that really separates them from you is the fact that they've done it longer and they've made good decisions, and that's why they're at where they're at. Their opinion has no validity above any of mine.
Sure, it's not even like they might be
here.
wrong, right? It's just that it's not my words that I thought of.
It's not me.
If I don't take the time.
Exactly. If you're constantly like thinking about what other people are saying, or you consuming it rather than trying to like break down how you actually feel about something, you're inherently going to just regurgitate what you've heard from other shows, which is a big reason why I don't listen to industry shows at all anymore. None. Except for What's Good Games, because they're pretty objective. I like to listen to y'all shows. Like I genuinely do, because usually it's something I'm already acquainted with. It's something I've already had time to process myself. And then I feel comfortable. It's like, I've yelled at all of you in my car, like, for sure have. But I've also agreed with a lot of the stuff you've said in the past, too. So, to me, that's like the
Sonic
sweet, like
cheeseburgers
the secret.
aren't that good, Gabe. Sonic cheeseburgers
You're wrong.
are not
You are wrong,
good.
and you'll always be wrong. Okay, you know what? I will admit that Sonic cheeseburgers are not that good if you admit that In-N-Out is not that good. Because it's not, and it never will be. I'm just saying.
Are you West Coast, Fonz? Where are you from?
I'm West Coast, but I'm Northwest, so I haven't been to an In-N-Out. I have a family that drives down there just for In-N-Out.
Yeah, you hear that? Have you ever heard anyone drive for a Sonic? No. It's like,
Right.
oh, we're stuck in this small town. Well, we have to eat a Sonic.
Wow, shots fired.
When we used to cross the
Okay.
border before the pandemic, we had a Sonic we went to just across down south, and yeah, it wasn't that good. Can't speak to In-N-Out, but I mean, I'll review it in a couple of years when I make it back down to the States.
All right, we'll circle back. We'll have to reconvene the four horsemen to settle
Yeah,
this debate.
we'll see. I mean, In-N-Out's fine. I mean, it is what
The
it
core
is.
of what you're
Anyways.
saying, though, I mean, we talked about this earlier, is like having a unique voice and having something that's different than out there. Like, why listen to something and regurgitate it? So,
Yeah, exactly. And I mean, at that point, you're just kind of showing your hand, because it's pretty easy, in my opinion, to like spot an acolyte of X, Y, and Z community. And I'm not calling anyone out. I'm just saying it's very easy to see when someone is made it a point that they are a part of a community, and that's great. Like, obviously, we're all about community. We all want to build our own communities. But whenever they start making arguments about stuff that they just heard in another podcast, it's like, dude, like, we all heard that. So, like, you're not breaking any new ground by whatever. Now, what is impressive is whenever you have that opinion before they say it. That's impressive. That has happened to me before, and I listen to someone else, and I'll say something, or I'll tweet something, and I'm like, this is what's happening for sure. And then, Paris Lilly goes out and says it, and it's like, oh my God, he is like the greatest guy ever. I'm like, I just said this like 2 days ago or 3 days ago. It's like nothing, but that's the thing. Like, we get like that psychology thing, right? The community aspect of, oh my God, I love these people. Like, I could make the same point about whatever it is, but I'm not going to be viewed the same way because I'm not so-and-so. And that's messed up. So watch out, listeners. Don't be that guy. Don't be an acolyte. Think for
are you
yourself.
threatening people right now?
Anyways.
Are you threatening people?
I am.
Okay.
It's my show. I'll do whatever the hell
Trying
I
to
want.
save
How
people
about
from
that?
themselves in the internet comments, I guess.
Yeah.
I am trying. Like, you know what? There's someone that was like typing furiously, and then they were just like, actually, you know what? Doop, delete the entire thing. So
Yeah.
You don't want Gabe to roll up on you on his Sonic skates.
2 hours in this podcast, that person deleted it. Sure, Gabe.
They've been typing it for the
They've
last
been
2
typing
hours.
the whole time. Yeah. Oh God. Oh,
Now,
my
to
God,
jump
that's
on that, I
hilarious.
have a kind of a problem where, because I try to be like too fair. I don't know if you guys have this issue with breaking down your opinion on something. But because I ingest a lot of the news, I'm trying to like either give, say a game's delayed or there's some kind of drama, there's bugs. I'll try and like give them the benefit of the doubt, or just talking to break down the minutia, because there's so many different rabbit holes to jump down to with a topic. And considering all the different variables, I find myself maybe not having like a strong opinion on something. And there's times where it's like, I wish I would rather just have that one direction or the other and then go with it. But do you find you guys having any issues like that, or you're pretty comfortable like developing your point of view on something and going that direction? Otherwise, with me, I'm like, sometimes I'm too balanced, and it's like I didn't really say anything. I guess I just like consider both sides and then pass it over.
I feel like
Gabe,
this is. Oh, go ahead, James.
I'm sorry.
Go ahead.
Oh, I'm going to say, Gabe, do you have strong opinions?
Bro, I got hot takes. Usually it's like super reactive, and I do not care if I step on anyone's toes. Like, I'll fight you. Like, I have no problem going toe-to-toe with people in the comments, and I never will, because that's the beauty of the hobby. Like, that's the beauty of the thing, is breaking down the facts, like what Fonz just says. Like, if you can break down the facts and get into the nitty-gritty of whatever it is you're talking about, and you have as much objective information as you can, and you base your opinion off of what you've read, and you can bring a strong argument to the table, or at least have enough information to where you can play devil's advocate, I think that's like one of the best things ever, because it's very easy to see, like, I don't want to say anyone's wrong, but it's just very easy. It's very easy to see who is going to be reasonable about something and who is not. Because there's one thing that I would say is, yes, I have hot takes, very strong opinions, and you're usually formed very quickly. But I'm a pretty reasonable person. So, like, if you can present an argument to me where I'm like, you know what, I didn't think about that, I'm not going to die on a hill. Unless it's about Sonic cheeseburgers and In-N-Out.
And
That's the hill.
That's
That's the
NFTs
hill.
in games.
I'm just saying.
Suck, right,
NFTs,
Gabe?
dude, you guys are missing the point, and I'm dying on that hill, dude. I'm dying on the hill. You're missing the point.
But no, here. One thing I'll say about Gabe is, and Fonz, he's like kind of the antithesis to what you're saying, of what you're just describing yourself. Gabe will like lean in hard, like as hard as you can on something, and if you push back a little bit, he'll listen. And that's the difference of like, that's where I think the balance lies of like, you do need to have a voice, like you need to have your own voice, but can that voice be challenged and be received well? Because the internet personalities who will just firmly die on a hill and not listen to anything else. Gabe's not that. Gabe will firmly like say something. He's not going to die on a hill. At least with us in our content, there's like usually 3 to 4 of us. So usually someone will have a dissenting opinion. And that kind of like saves the group, in my opinion, of like, we're not all just a hive mind saying the same thing. And I like that.
An echo chamber.
Yeah, it's not an echo chamber.
Yeah.
I like when we disagree. I think that's good content. So, I think the balance lies in being receptive to when you do have a firm opinion, being receptive to that contradictory or that other opinion out there.
I think that shows too the willingness of the host or whoever's on the show, right, to actually want to have these conversations, and they're not just like putting out that hot take opinion and dying on that hill just because it's like that's the character they want to play on X show because they're the cynical one or they're the hype one or whatever it is, it's your actual opinion. I think that's something that we at times can struggle with on our show, is like having the same opinion, and I think it's because it's hard to, like, I don't know if it's not always easy to play devil's advocate when you really feel strongly the other way, right? Like you almost want to give your genuine opinion over top of arguing the other side. And I think that it's something that can really improve the content at the same time. So I think it's something that is really worth doing, especially if you're going to have the same opinion as other people on the show. And like, it helps to have more people, right? You're saying, Jacob, you usually have someone who's negative on something, which helps. But for us with 2 people, I mean, occasionally we'll have a guest, but it's like, a lot of the time we are going to agree. And on one hand, it makes it difficult to have, a lot of critical conversations if we both really like something, or if we both really didn't like it, it's the opposite. But I think at the same time, if we both really connect on a game and do have very similar viewpoints, it also means we really go really deep, far down the rabbit hole of what we did like. And so you can have some really enriching conversations there too. It just isn't so much like an argument as it is. It's more just like praising whatever it is and really getting into the nitty gritty of why. So I think there's room for both, but you're right though.
Well, Yeah.
Yeah, no.
Sorry,
I
didn't
was
mean to
done.
cut you
Go ahead.
off. I think too, like, there's one reason why I think me and Ethan, my other co-host for Punch Counterpunch, like why we vibe so well, and that's since I have known him. If a conversation, especially with podcasting, if a conversation is going like we're in the same lane, Ethan is able to put himself in the shoes and make a valid point of someone walking in the other lane, and just for the sake of conversation. And not everybody can do that, especially on the fly like that. And I think he may not even actually genuinely feel that way, and it's not like he's going to die on that hill. It's just for the sake of, but are we thinking, it's like, are we as Whoans, it's like, are we thinking to whatever about this? I mean, is there something else there? And that usually will spark something. It's chemistry. It's like, oh my God, yeah, I didn't even think about that. Yeah, blah, 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 blah. Then you have your next point. And that's just like incredible. But at the same time, kind of like to what Jacob was saying, I will lean hard into an opinion, especially if I think I'm right, unless you can convince me otherwise. Like I said, there has to be you can argue hard and like talk hard, but like you have to have a sense of being reasonable. And to be reasonable, you have to genuinely like care what the other person is saying and not just be thinking about what you're going to say next. And that's also really hard to do, especially as podcasters. Like we want, it's like you want to cut someone off, especially when you're in person. It's like, oh God, like I have to say this, right? And it's one of the hardest things ever. But, God, I was going to say something else, but I completely forgot.
Someone cut him
over.
off, quick.
Just go.
Yeah. Well, I brought up the topic, and it's just something that I honestly have, it's like an internal thing I always think about. But I gravitate and really respect creators. Like, I'm glad to be in this group with you guys talking now, because I get that vibe from all of you, that you'll tackle a subject and look at it, try and remove emotion, still have your take on it, but you also will try and break these topics down. And I'm just a fan, as I get older, of these spaces that do that, and they can have these conversations that maybe are controversial, what have you, but they can try and approach them and consider all the variables and have your hot take, sure, but if you can have someone who can play devil's avocado and opposite of whatever you feel like, you can. I love those conversations, and like I have those in real life. And if I'm ever in a circle of people and you get that vibe, you can tell from people where if you approach something, they just don't want to pick it apart, or they're already combative. You just kind of go, okay, this person doesn't want to talk about this or doesn't want to open, maybe other possibilities. So you kind of, you can naturally like adjust. But I just like these conversations, and as going forward, this is what I want to do, this kind of thing.
Yeah, same. And I think also too, like some content creators are so afraid of their opinion changing because they're on record saying one thing. And that is one thing I am not afraid to do, is change my opinion, because you have to. Like, that is the name of the game. If you can't change your opinion on X, Y, and Z, or at least flirt with the idea of changing it, then you're not challenging yourself. Like,
I saw a quote one time, and it was literally like, the day that you're old is the day that you're no longer able to change your opinion, or something to those lines. When it's like you become so ingrained in whatever, right? I just thought it's kind of relatable.
You may not change your opinion fully, but I think just having an aspect of trying to find that middle ground and like genuinely see where the other person is coming from with an argument, it just makes you a better conversationalist in general. Like I totally believe in that.
Well, so. Yeah, and it's separating yourself from like pride and ego also, right? I mean,
totally.
We've danced around it, but if you can't be moved on an opinion, that's a pride problem or an ego problem. And there's plenty of that in this space. There absolutely is. So if you can separate yourself early on from your pride and ego, you're going to have a lot better time. And it's going to be a lot less defensive too.
Yeah, I totally agree with that.
Well, fellas, we're rounding out almost close to 3 hours here.
Yeah.
Do you want to end quickly on this last, and this could also, branch into a whole big thing, but if you want to end on this last one about future goals for your podcast, what do you want to, achieve?
So, yeah, Fonz, I'm commandeering this podcast from you right now.
Go for it.
4 more hours.
And I want you to go. I want you to go. What is your goal with the with Plastic Hearts? You've been, it's hats off to Fonz for doing such a good job, moderating this discussion, and it takes a big load off of me to not have to do it. So shout out to you, man. Like that is why I've never seen a host that genuinely will just listen and listen and listen and listen. That's something you do beautifully. And anytime you come back with anything, it's like, God, like I didn't even think he was gonna go there, but you do, and it's great. So, what's your goal for plastic cards?
The goal is to kind of keep what we're doing, but and I thought I wanted this, but recently I had a good week where everything lined up, and I had guest after guest after guest. Like I had James on. We're doing this tonight.
You're popping
I had
off.
someone,
Yeah.
and it was really just where it kind of worked, where I had approached a lot of people, and it worked over this one week where it was just chock full of stuff. And before that, I kept telling myself I want to do more. I was doing weekly, bi-weekly. Sometimes we'd have to skip a week. Found myself with this extra time. It's like I want to commit more. Then I get this week, and it's like hell week. It's like all this editing and negotiating times and stuff. And I was like, oh man, maybe I don't want that. But going forward, I do want to. It goes back to time management, but I do want to link up more and just kind of create more content, have more of a presence. I think I could do more there, and yeah, grow the channel. And I love. The focus is to link up with more creators because people will jump on as they jump on, but I want to have these conversations more with other like-minded people that can, as we said before, have this open mind to talk about whatever, whether it's gaming or not. But I just want to pursue that more in this next year and focus on that. But that's it for me on my end.
Jacob Bush.
All right, so I'm not the most goal-oriented person, and that like comes from a place of like not wanting to not hit those goals. So like if you don't set any goals, you can't fail at any goals. But if I'm going to share anything that's in the back of my mind, it's usually centered around stuff like our Dark Patterns episode where we interviewed Dr. Celia Hoden and Rachel Cohort.
So good, dude.
Amazing
like,
episode.
That was my favorite podcasts ever.
So like it's what that was me looking into the industry and finding something that I don't see other people talking about, or an interview that I didn't see out there already. And, you know, if you look at our content, it's like a lot of reviews, a lot of news. I mean, if you look at all of our content in the same week, it's usually we overlap something, right? It's some news topic. So my goal usually, big picture, is to create some evergreen content that's like, no matter when you look at this, it's significant to the industry, or listening to these people talk. There's a pending episode we have right now with the University of Arizona. They collaborated with the Age of Empires. We have something lined up with them to talk about, you know, education in games. And that's something that I went to University of Arizona. So like, I'm kind of biased already to like seeing that niche there. But in general, it's finding those things that aren't spoken in the industry and like bringing light to them. And it's hard to do, really. I mean, the video game industry is huge, and there's a lot of people talking about it. So my personal goal is finding like those interesting topics that aren't being highlighted yet. And I can't even tell you what that is right now. I can tell you what the next one is in the next few weeks when we do record that episode. But the one after that, I haven't planned yet. So that's kind of my personal goals for Bush League Gaming right now.
That's amazing, dude. Yeah, I can't. I genuinely, like, it took me one episode to realize, like, oh my God, like, these guys have something, you know? And I genuinely feel in certain aspects, all of our content, and everyone here, like, we all have various things where I'm like, wow, I really like this thing, like, you know, whatever that thing may be. And it's kind of a similar deal to Circles and Squares too, with James and his sister. Is they have a one of a kind like chemistry where it's like just the chemistry of you guys going back and forth, and it's almost like you can anticipate what she's saying, and there is a slight delay, but it's like you know your sister really
Sure.
well, like there's a relationship there, and it's just like, man, like all this talent, natural talent. That's kind of what I consider like natural talent of being. Knowing how the flow of a conversation is going to go and then trying to capture that because there's beauty in communication. And I think to a certain extent, all of us have something like that. So to hear you talk about just kind of wanting to do interesting things and incorporate like different mediums and different, you know, social landscapes and stuff like that to bring games into the conversation, like that's big, you know, that is ambitious, and I can't wait to see what you do. So that's freaking awesome.
Thanks, Gabe.
I want to echo that as well. I have the doc that I sent you guys. I have an original one where it's that same thought with Bush League, where it's like, oh, these guys are pros, and it's just taking everyone else around them to catch up to what they're doing. But I think it was your NFT episode a while back, and you just had these thought out, well thought takes, and you're fair and it brought up all these variables. Still had your spin, your emotion on. Okay, here's how I feel, but here's also how you could interpret it, this angle, and I just dug it. And I see.
I do too.
That's why I also brought up that really lame audio question about the echoes, but it's just like you guys are so pros with the production, with the audio, but the thoughts, which is the big thing. And I had that note in my thoughts in my doc too, and I was like, yeah, these guys they're not messing around.
Yeah, I mean it's one of those things. Like, I feel like we're in like Naruto or something.
That's not what I was expecting
like,
to hear.
Like Bush League Gaming is literally Sasuke, you guys. Like, everyone wants to be Bush League.
I don't understand these
Neither do
references.
Well, you need to.
Like, Sasuke is the guy
Do-
with
Let's
the
do
right?
Dragon Ball.
Do better.
Goku.
You
Or
all need
Trunks.
to do
Give me
better.
some
All
Goku or
right.
Trunks references.
You all suck. I hate you all. No, I'm just kidding. It very much is that thing of like, I don't want my, and this is very much how I felt like whenever I listened to industry shows all the time, which I still do listen to Collins Moriarty's stuff just because he's very, just the way he approaches news, I really, really enjoy. I don't want to emulate someone else's show. I don't want to listen to a show and see like, oh, these guys think they're kind of funny. You're not. You're never going to be kind of funny. Stop trying to be kind of funny. We all know that you're trying to be kind of funny. Quit doing that. Like, create something that gives people the same feeling that they have. Like, emulating your heroes is great, but don't try and be them. Like, create something that is going to give someone the same feeling that you get from the shows that you appreciate. And that's kind of how I feel with like Plastic Hearts, Circles and Squares, and Bush League Gaming is, I want my listeners to feel how I feel whenever I listen to those shows, because it's practical. They're practical, first of all, and it makes my day better. Like, it just makes my day better, no matter what it is. No matter if, I mean, let's be real. Like, if you're able to listen to every single one of your podcasts, especially your acquaintances' podcasts, all the way through consistently, you are a god. I don't understand how that's even possible to do that. I will dip in anywhere from 15 minutes to 40 minutes, and then I'll do that on the next episode, and the next episode, and the next episode, because there's just not enough time. There's too much supply and not enough time to consume it all. And that's okay. You know, I think we can all continue to like learn from these strengths that make us feel that way so that we can implement certain aspects of that into our own shows, you know, and I love the camaraderie. You know, a lot of people want to like compete rather than be cooperative, and that's not gonna work ever. In my opinion, especially now with like so many big outlets doing it. It's like, dude, if you're not trying to like collaborate with other people, or at least be like, you know, someone on the sidelines kind of being like, dude, like, good job, or man, that's rad, or, you know, even just like throwing a like, I find myself like actually genuinely enjoying something. But then if I see someone has a bunch of likes, I'm like, man, they don't need my like, whatever. Like, just like weird internal petty stuff that I think a lot of us kind of can struggle with. And you know, like, any form of support is always going to be good, you know? So kudos to Bush League.
A rising tide lifts all boats. And I anytime I'm in this space thinking about others and success and not success, and I think as long as we stick together, like, we motivate each other. If we get a tip, like we just talked about YouTube ads, and if we, you know, we talk about shorts and different tricks that work. Just because I share something that worked for me doesn't mean just because it might work for you now, it's going to pull away from me. No, like, let's lift each other up, and maybe you'll find something later down the line that'll help me, and vice versa. So there's no reason ever to get competitive in this space. There's so much content out there, and there's so many people to consume that content, that as long as you can like encourage each other and keep each other going, it's gonna be a less lonely place and a lot more fun to collaborate like this. So that's I think it's so important.
I agree. James, you magnificent man. You. What's the goals for Circles and Squares, man?
Well, I mean, I mentioned before, I think the number one thing for us is like, or for me, I guess personally, is the time capsule portion of it. I just love the idea of having those thoughts documented. So, I mean, that's the future goal, and I mean, it's pretty easy to accomplish given what we do on this show. So it's not like something I'm really working at. It's just the ongoing kind of core nature of where it starts. But I mean, I guess in terms of goals, where we're going with, I guess it'll be entering the third year of the show would be I would love to get something similar to like Fonz's setup of having some video clips and stuff on the show, just kind of like, spicing up the editing a bit more, as we're all talking about that kind of stuff. Um, I mean, I really admire what Jacob's done with those interviews as well. Like that Dark Patterns episode was fantastic. I would love to get something like that, not to like steal your ideas, of course, but there's so many different ways to bring on experts and people. Obviously, it's not like a stolen idea, but I mean, yeah, stuff like that. It's just, I mean, we've always thought about doing the show live on Twitch and stuff like that as well, but it's just those little ways, continuing. And then like everyone said too, it's obviously collaboration and whatnot. Like we've been interacting with you guys on Twitter now for a better part of like what, almost 2 years time as well. And it's the first time we're sitting down to actually talk on a podcast now. So, I mean, more of that, I guess, with you guys and others.
That's a really wholesome goal, dude. Like,
It's true, man. I mean,
literally,
sure.
it's like I just want to make my stuff better.
Well, I mean,
like,
sure.
that's it.
You could
Like,
say like I could sit
Yeah.
here. Of course, everyone wants to start making a bunch of income on their content and start like
Sure.
getting sponsorship deals and all this stuff. But I mean, I feel like those goals kind of go without saying, because who's not gonna take like a sponsorship if they get it right? But I mean, those to me, those are kind of things where it's like, if those things coincide with what I'm already trying to do, then that's great. But I think that I personally try and stay away from setting those type of goals, because it's the kind of thing where I feel like a lot of people are going to meet failure if that's how they're measuring their success, right? So I try and make it more internal, at least
Yeah.
for the base goals.
Yeah, it can be discouraging, and like if that's what you're shooting for right now, you're gonna make sacrifices along the way to get there too that probably shouldn't be made. So
Yeah.
yeah, it's
well, and this is. Go
no,
ahead.
no, you're
sorry.
good, you're good.
I was just gonna say, it's funny hearing you say that, Jacob, because Jacob got an early copy of Guardians of the Galaxy and got to play it early. He was the only one of my peers that got a copy of that game early. And Jacob and I have talked about getting review codes for games and like all this other stuff, and like you talking about like income and kind of the perks.
Yeah,
right.
right.
We all want to get. Well, I mean, there's elements of it. I have kind of decided, like for me, like if it ever got to the point where I get sent something early, I'm buying a copy. That way I can say I actually paid for it. Because there's just a mental thing with me where I'm like, you didn't pay for the game, so how can I trust anything you're saying about it? Because guess what? It's the same thing as like me game sharing with my buddy. It's like I always preface with like, I got this game for free, so here's my opinion on it. Like I got Elden Ring for free, so it's like, okay, you inherently look at it differently. Same thing with being in the industry and like taking any sort of sponsorships. Like I've had a couple of like whenever you work with a company and like you get a code, and if like they buy a certain amount of stuff, then you get a portion of that. I can't remember what that's called, but yeah, I mean, there can be an emphasis like put on that. Like we want to get whatever the perk is that you want. We all want those perks, But kind of like what Jake was saying, like measuring yourself based off that, you're just gonna let yourself down.
Well, like all but the top 1% of shows would, right? If that's what you're judging it based on.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, that's exactly right. And I think the trap of like getting so caught up in what the big guys are doing. It's like, well, you listen to them for 30 hours a month or 40 hours a month or however many, so it's gonna be natural for you to want to do some of those things that they're doing, but. Like finding your own journey, kind of like what you're talking about, like kind of picking things you like from other shows you enjoy. Like that's literally how it's done. Like that's how you make a good podcast, is by imitating, and any content really, in my opinion, is like by imitating people you like already that make you feel a certain way. So I love hearing that, man. I love hearing all those goals. That's really
They're good
rad.
ones, I think, right?
Yeah, I think they're just practical and like, easily relatable, which is what I wanted, whenever we kind of decided to like throw this thing together and make it happen. But for my goal, I think like trying to be honest with myself on what I actually want to spend my time on. and keeping my integrity towards that. So like right now, I'm firing on all cylinders to keep up with our weekly content, and I'm trying to push out the first season of Storytime, a Star Wars RPG podcast that we've been recording for 6-8 months at this point. And I'm really, really excited about it. And even if no one listens to it, it is by far going to be one of the most ambitious projects I've ever done, easily. And that's satisfying to be working on something like that. My main goal is to get better internet, first of all, because if I literally just had double what I had, right now, 20 megabit download, 7 megabit upload, I'd be unstoppable. Like,
sounds unstoppable to me.
Dude, I'd be unstoppable. It'd be insane. But I don't have that. So I think just kind of continuing to find that balance between what I actually enjoy doing versus what I feel obligated to do for whatever reason, like whatever mental hang up, and focusing on what I'm actually having fun with. Like, for instance, I would love to have 20 episodes of A Guy and His Wife out this year. Like, that would be amazing. Doing that and consuming more rather than just always saying something. Like, playing my backlog of games, like actually playing them and enjoying them and not feeling like I have to talk or have an opinion on every single thing. Because I know I'm going to get that week to week. And just not getting so caught up in the hype of what everyone's talking about on Twitter. Because it's for a lot of people, I feel like that is kind of their, like, I don't want to say religion, but it's almost like they worship it in a way. And like they have to have it. It's like symbiotic. And I just don't want to be like that, And I found myself being like that in the past. And it's just, I want to move away from that because it's just not healthy for me personally. But I think all of those things working together works towards a happy Gabe doing what Gabe likes and enjoying his life. And I think that's all, that's what's most important when you boil it down. It's like, I just want to play video games for a long time and not have to feel like I have to have an opinion on every single thing. Like, I just genuinely want to enjoy stuff. So,
amen to enjoyment. There you go.
Amen to enjoyment.
Amen.
Guys, the 4 horsemen have spoken. This was a 3-hour-long podcast, and I knew it. I knew it was going to be a 3-hour-long podcast.
Did you?
Before we even started. Whenever I saw Fonz's outline, I was like, oh my God. This
5 questions. Oh my God.
Wild.
I mean, you get 4 hosts. You get 4 hosts together.
Yeah.
It's gonna happen, right?
That's the thing. Yeah, we could have 2 questions, but because there's 4 of us, and we're gonna go off the trail every once in a while. It's gonna extend the time.
Yeah, and I'm exactly like the same way. It's like you start talking about something, and you find yourself down a trail, and you're like, wait a minute, how did I get here? And then you being able to find yourself and reroute whatever point you're on back to like the original question. Jacob's really good at that. I think that's a true talent. So I feel like all things considered, this is a pretty fun episode. Like we did, like I definitely want to do a couple of these a year for sure. The 4 horsemen have convened. We've made all the decisions for the world's future.
Amen.
Now in a couple months, we're going to disperse. A couple months, we'll reconvene and do it again.
I picture us like putting our sword together, like on a table.
Yeah,
literally.
Then one of us like walks back into the ocean. Someone else like flies into the sky.
Literally. I almost
Power
tweeted
Rangers.
out like a picture of like it's like a comic book Illuminati like kind of doing stuff, but I given like the current world events that actually made it like kind of fall in the bad taste category.
Good job. Yeah,
so
good call,
I thought
Well, that's why I stuck the
it.
little
So
Spider-Man
actually,
villain meme underneath your tweet there, and I thought maybe that could be more fun.
That was good.
Yeah,
good.
I was glad you did that.
Good taste.
So.
Yeah.
Or a Voltron thing where somebody's the leg, somebody's the head.
Shotgun the
and
legs,
just
dude.
combine
Yes.
Shotgun the
together.
legs.
There you go. I'll be the
left
I'll
arms.
be the right arm.
Left arms.
Left
I want to
arm.
be the butt.
I
Was there
said
ever a
right
robot
arm.
that was the
There
butt?
you go. Oh, God.
Maybe I watched a different one, a bootleg one.
All right, we're bringing it home. Let's go around the table. Fonz, Jacob, James, in that order. Where can people find you? Plug all your stuff, do the thing, and then we're gonna wrap this bad boy up.
You can keep up with us on Twitter at Plastic Heart Pod, and it's Plastic Heart Podcast everywhere, YouTube, Twitch, all that jazz.
Yeah.
Bush League.
Oh no, it's you next. Go ahead.
I
Go
jumped
ahead.
it. Did I jump ahead?
No, I think it was me. Just go ahead. All good.
BushLeagueGaming.com. Bush League Gaming on everything else. Just type that Busch. It's a weird spelling.
Ours is at CNS Pod on Twitter, CANDSPOD, and go there. All our links are there. You can follow us individually, and yeah, YouTube, Anchor, Linktree, all that good stuff.
There you have it. I'm Gabriel Fast. I will always be the wannabe critic. That's all you need to know. Say goodbye, gentlemen.
Goodbye.
Sayonara.
Sayonara. I like that one.
Well, once again, thank you so much for showing up today. I really, really appreciate it. Again, if this is your first time here, consider subscribing. I know that's the thing that all the YouTubers do. Everyone's asking to sub. The fact of the matter is that it doesn't cost you anything to subscribe, and who knows, you might even see a video every now and then that you actually like or may be interested in. Not only that, I do a bunch of stuff, so make sure you check all the information down in the description down below. We got podcasts, we got Let's Plays, we got all kinds of stuff for all kinds of fandoms. So make sure you check that out. I would seriously, seriously appreciate it, and I would love to see you around here more. I am Gabriel Fast. I will always be the wannabe critic.